Welcome to episode 223 of the Necronoma.com. And now, a special message from my co-host, Don Guillory.
Hello, everyone. This is Don. I'm not on this episode because at the moment, I'm in the middle of the Caribbean on a ship. And been thinking a lot about those Ocean Gate memes and jokes that I've been sharing, and hopefully I'll come back home soon. But in the meantime, I want to wish all of you a very happy, productive, and healthy holiday season, whatever you happen to celebrate, or if you don't happen to celebrate. Oh, and then number two, fuck Roman Polanski, and especially fuck Woody Allen. And more importantly, if you happen to like either of these individuals, fuck you too. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus, and a Happy New Year to everyone except for Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, all the people that supported them and covered for them, and anybody who likes them. They can all go to hell. Enjoy this episode.
I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And my co-host is still gone this whole month, leaving me all alone. He just abandoned me. And that's fine, because today I have two guests, and he's going to miss out on an amazing conversation, so too bad. So joining me, I have Rebecca Cuthbert, Laurel Hightower here. I'm excited that you're both here to talk about Rosemary's Baby. You've both been here before, but if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a bit about yourselves, I would appreciate it.
Me? Okay. I'm Laurel Hightower. I've been on a couple times. I'm a horror author. I'm a mom, and you'll all be glad to know that I did not slam several shots of bourbon prior to this, so that hopefully my rage at all of the subtext of this movie will be contained to the little box where you can see my picture.
Nice.
Excellent.
Rebecca?
I am Rebecca, and I am the author of In Memory of Exoskeletons, a dark poetry collection. And I have 3 books coming out in 24, the first of which is Creep This Way, How to Become a Horror Author with 24 Steps to Get You Ghouling. So I'm very excited about that. That's from Seamus and Nunzio Productions. But other than that, I am a college instructor of creative writing classes.
Nice. I believe you recently got a new position as well.
Oh, yes. I was asked to be the editor-in-chief of Psychotoxin Press's new Pink Horror imprint.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about that. We're going to try to put out 2 new titles under that imprint in 2024. So I will be annoying people soon to send me their submissions.
I mean, you're already on the call with Laurel, so no. Anyway, see, that's what I do.
If there's one thing we know about horror authors is that they don't ever want to submit anything.
No,
they're definitely not, scrabbling for purchase for their stories. So
no,
I'm sure
and
they'll have a really hard time.
5 manuscripts in their drawer that they're
None
just
of
juggling out there.
Not a single one. No.
Yep.
No.
You should just start a panel called "What Else Do You Have?" where the whole panel is just pitching other stories and hoping somebody wants to buy them while you're there.
That's a great idea.
So I know this because of your Facebook status, Rebecca, but what is pink horror for anyone who doesn't know?
Oh, okay. So I don't want to answer for everyone, but my definition of pink horror is that it's a rebranding of feminist horror. Feminist horror is not new, but I love the term pink horror. I think it's catchy. I think it will grab some people's attention. And I also think it's important because women need to, I don't want to say reclaim the horror genre, because that implies that we lost our claim. We've always been around, but it's a good way to remind folks that we are here. So pink horror, feminist horror deals with women's issues, women's storylines. The women do not have to necessarily be like the heroine. They can definitely also be villains. But there's a lot out there that needs a chance to get in front of audiences. And I think Pink Horror is going to help make that happen. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Really fast. I skipped making a joke at the beginning of the episode because I didn't have one. So I just want to pretend because I just found the best one and I want to throw this out.
Oh, you can edit it in later, man. Right?
Oh, I don't edit. Didn't Rebecca tell you? So anyway, no. So the joke I should have made is I wish a cult would have taken me from my mother. There you go. So
oh my God.
I knew you'd love
Sorry,
that.
it's just the box above my head just gave me a little thing that said reducing noise. So apparently I laughed too loud for this fucking program. Thanks, Google Meet. Trying to silence me. Anyways, please proceed.
See? That's the man trying to keep you down. Holy crap.
I'm actually really loud, but that's not going to change.
So I always like to know why people picked this film in this situation. Rebecca, you picked it. So what is it about Rosemary's Baby?
There's so much here. Like, I thought the last episode I did was the season of the witch. And I thought that was like so much, but Rosemary's Baby is so much more. There's so much more to dig into here. It's a classic. It is such a classic that it is credited in the late 60s with like ushering in a renewal in horror films. So we got a bunch of awesome stuff in the 70s, like the Amityville Horror and The Exorcist. And a lot of that can be like traced back to Rosemary's Baby and like giving the nation some really good, juicy horror that they loved. And then they wanted more.
Nice.
Plus, it's Satan's baby. Like, it's this whole, like, Rosemary's Baby is a cultural term. Like, it's gone beyond the book, beyond the movie, to just be like when someone has like an awful child, it's a joke. You call the kid Rosemary's Baby. It's funny. So
I've actually not heard that. I've never heard anyone say that. It's a little unfair too, because pretty sure the satanic side of them would come from, the dude in that instance.
I mean, if that's not social commentary tied into this movie, I don't know what is. So,
brief aside, Rosemary's Baby is such a part of the cultural lexicon, and I was so much more aware of horror items than anything else when I was growing up. I worked at a Texas Roadhouse when I was like 20, and of course we had to, I played a lot of country music, and we would do these line dances to things. I'm recovering, but one of them, there was a country song that was like, "I am Rosemary's granddaughter." I legit thought that it was like the devil's granddaughter. I was like, "Oh, your dad's the devil." That's a cool country song, man. You all don't normally touch on this kind of shit. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're Rosemary's granddaughter." And then like when I brought it up one time, I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, Hightower?" I'm like, I don't think you can really use that term and not address that, because otherwise I think it's a fair assumption. Yeah, I was good with it. I'm like, sure, claim your own, girl. Stake out your own claim away from Daddy Devil.
A friend of mine, her mom is named Rosemary, so I like got an endless thrill out of saying like she was literally Rosemary's Baby. So.
That's awesome. I just love that we picked this for the Christmas episode. I thought, there's just so many other Mary's Babies things going on. I was like, well, we'll just fit right into that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, because none of that was ever horrifying at all.
No, exactly. No, not at all. So, Laurel, do you have anything you want to add to that of why this movie is like what we're talking about, or what you love about it, or anything like that before we jump in fully?
I mean, like, so much of it is this sort of like rage-infused babble that will come out of my mouth. So I probably can't be super succinct about it. I'm going to leave that sort of like professionalism to Rebecca. I'm going to do a lot of cussing, and another fucking thing. That's what you're going to get a lot of from me today. So I'm going to try to listen some too.
I also
Rebecca,
think
not to you.
For all of us, it's the cultural moment of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And so going back to the late 60s when this was, just as much of a hot topic and people were fighting to get this women's healthcare access in the first place. And it's such an issue in the movie. It's such, a strong line of the subtext. So I think that it is very timely once again, but it is sad that it is once again timely, but that's the fucking truth, is that it is. So
oh, absolutely. And even just how much Guy, her husband, is in charge of her body. I said that with air quotes and then realized we don't have video on this.
And it doesn't really even need air quotes, though. It just is.
Yeah, right. It is. Yeah, he absolutely is. But just how much that's coming back, like how much I'm seeing, oh, you can't have that because what if you divorce your husband and get married again and that guy wants kids? And I'm like, why the fuck is that a concern? And yes, I know. But Jesus Christ, I just... So I guess what I'm trying to say is I watched this. I haven't watched it in probably 25 years before this. So everything was kind of new to me again. I watched Guy, and every scene I want to punch Guy harder than I wanted to punch him in the scene before that. And I'm getting so angry and so just like I just hurt watching this dude. And I'm like, and I'm a guy. I'm a cis white male. Like I can't imagine going through having your rights totally destroyed this way and then seeing this shit from almost 50 fucking years ago, and it's tying in directly, and I'm getting angry talking about it. So I guess what I want to say is I just feel like I'm like tapping a small piece of whatever like my wife or you two or anyone listening is feeling. I'm worried about my daughter and all this shit. And I just want to throw out to everybody. I mean, I know I get political on this show all the fucking time anyway, but this is not the time to be fucking silent. This is not the time to sit it out and hope it works out. You need to fucking do something and fix this shit, everybody.
I would love to add I'm going to give a small ray of hope to that because genuinely this feels hopeful to me. I'm a Kentuckian, and we recently had our gubernatorial election. Our governor, Andy Beshear, was reelected, which was excellent. He's a fantastic governor. He is the reason that most of Kentucky didn't drop dead of COVID. Looking at you, Matt Bevin, you piece of shit. But he was reelected. He was running against Daniel Cameron, the Republican candidate, and he not only addressed abortion, but he ran it as his main fucking issue.
It's awesome.
Wow.
And it was not a third rail thing. And I don't think it was until he did that and was massively, smashingly successful on it that I realized, why is this like the first time that someone has had the balls to be like, no, we're not going to pretend this isn't a fucking issue? Because I don't know about you, Rebecca, but every fucking time I have brought that up as a concern in elections, which I have done since I was old enough to know that it was a thing. I hear, oh, well, I mean, it's not really an issue anymore, is it? I mean, you guys have access to it. Can we quit talking about it now? Like, come on. Like, it's an issue that loses voters. And I'm like, but does it? Does it? Have you ever tried? And there's Andy Beshear, middle fingers in the air. And a large part of his win, and he credited her almost immediately upon the announcement of his winning the election. There was a young woman who filmed a spot for him, and she talked about how she'd been raped by her stepfather at like the age of, it was a very young age. And she's like, and I'm talking to you, Daniel Cameron, you would have chosen to make me carry this child. And I was like, fuck yeah. Now, the fact that she had to get up there and talk about something that personal is sickening to me. But I would love to buy her all the bourbons and ice cream and whatever she needs because she saved our asses. And to me, that's immensely, immensely hopeful that Andy Beshear ran on that as a major issue. And I hope that other fucking Democrats and independent parties take note. We give a shit.
Yep.
Y'all have loaded the gun, held it to our heads, and said, we won't pull the trigger, we promise. Stop having hysterical effects to it. Fuck you, motherfuckers. Anyway, tee-hee.
Oh, man. And while I'm stuck on this note and telling people how to vote, I want to say that this whole nonsense of, oh, it's states' rights, fuck you. Because as soon as the GOP is in charge, it will become a federal issue again. So don't give me that fucking shit and don't fall for it.
Yep. So film.
Is there a film? Are we talking about a movie today? Cool.
I don't even care. We can rant in a circle the entire time. I don't care.
So just so all our listeners know, I brought 10 pages of notes today, but none of them were mine. So they're all Rebecca's. So we're going to let Rebecca lead the way. And I'll just be here to mansplain this film for you both. And
thank God.
There comes all my hate mail. That's all I want.
Excellent.
No, really, I just... I sincerely want to thank you both for doing this episode. I want to say really fast that this is one thing that is super fucking important to me. And I'm glad that we can talk about it honestly and also look at this film that is so culturally significant and tap into that. And normally I say that at the end of the episode, but I didn't want to forget. So, Rebecca, with that said, you're in charge. We're just here. No, I'm just here.
Right.
Laurel can do whatever she wants.
Well, I want to pre-apologize to the listeners because 10 pages of notes became 11 this morning because I had more things I was curious about. So I went back and I hit up the research again.
I love
it. So to start off, I want to go back to Ira Levin. I want to go back to the book because most people know that Rosemary's Baby was a novel before it was a movie. Interesting, though, the novel had not come out yet when they bought it as a film. So Ira Levin was a known entity. This is the fourth piece of his that was made into a film. His second novel, the other two were plays. So he was a playwright, he was a novelist. He'd already won some awards. So people knew who he was by the time he wrote Rosemary's Baby, and people were excited about it. And so the book itself came out in April of 1967. Film rights were bought in March of 1967. They were all gung-ho about it, Paramount. Okay, so but now we're going to go back before that. So Levin started writing this in 1965. He claims that he was a Jewish atheist, okay? And he wrote this novel while his wife was pregnant. They lived in a small apartment in New York City. And he sort of, Rosemary's Baby, the novel grew along with his unborn child. And he would not let his wife read the manuscript because it was so fucked up, because he was just letting all of his parental fears take shape in this book. So he didn't want to pass that anxiety along to his wife. So, and then interesting was that he was really nervous about writing it because he was scared about backlash. He was afraid he was going to be blacklisted, and he was afraid that people were going to freak out and do the cancel him essentially, when his career was just getting started. And so, so before the book came out, it was bought up as a movie and they started working on it immediately. The book came out, people loved it. It sold millions and millions of copies. But the hate was there. So alongside all of this success and commercial success, he was making really good money for the late 1960s on this book and on the film rights and everything. People sent him hate mail. They were sending the producer hate mail. The church was totally against it. People were all up in arms about how mad it made them. But just right now, that just made it sell more. People were putting it out there about how mad they were at this movie. And they were real mad because it says shit one time. They were really mad about that. And then they were mad about all the other, religious, they called it blasphemy, but people were running to buy this book, they were some people were probably hate reading it, but you still have to buy it to hate read it. So it was selling. The movie came out in June of 1968, box office hit, broke records in its first weekend. So this was a big deal. Roman Polanski is the one who directed this, but it was first offered to Alfred Hitchcock, who was I'm not interested in this material. And I bet he just kicked himself because, Polanski was yes, please. Yeah.
I hope he did. You're bad and you should feel bad. I mean, not universally Hitchcock, but that was a poor choice.
Right. But he wrote the screenplay too. He wrote the script, Polanski did, which I didn't know before I looked it up. And apparently he took all of the dialogue verbatim from the novel. Like, he didn't rewrite it. Like, he was just like, yes, all the dialogue will stay as is. But people have pointed out that that is somewhat problematic because in the novel, you get a close third-person narration to Rosemary's perspective. Like, you get her view of the world and you get her thoughts. But you don't get that in the movie. So there's some dialogue that makes more sense in the books than it does in the film. Like, they're like, Polanski could have like finessed that a little bit more instead of just like copying and pasting. That's what he did.
I don't have a nice way to ask this. So is she as terribly dumb in the book as she seems in the movie?
That's in my notes too, James. And the answer is no. They dumbed her down. Because
I had a feeling. Yeah.
I mean, you're all writers, and probably a lot of the people who listen to this are writers. And it's like one of the ways that we get sympathies for our protagonists is to give their points of view, whether it's a close third or it's a first person narration. And so when we get Rosemary's thoughts, she seems more real. She seems more like this like fully formed adult human than she does in the movie. And of course, that's on purpose, right? Like, they dumbed her down because they wanted to make her more innocent, like maximum naive, you know, maximum, oh, I don't know how to function in the world, you know. So, but it's somewhat frustrating to people who read the novel and they're like, you know, she's not quite so frustratingly silly in the book. And that's the thing that irritated me. I mean, I hated Guy. We all hate Guy, everyone. Everyone should hate Guy. If you don't hate Guy, I hate you. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that. But otherwise, it was just really frustrating to see the character of Rosemary just shrugging off every warning, every red flag. You know, it was like cartoon villain music could have been playing in the background of a scene that she could hear and she would still ignore it. And apparently that's a little different from the book.
I wonder though, like, because I think they did do an amazing job, and it has been a long time since I've read the book, but I do recall what you're saying, that it was a lot of the things made more sense, like particularly the dream sequences and things like that, because those were totally out of context and you're like, what the fuck are you doing here? But yeah, like her thought processes and things like that, you know, made a lot more sense when you're reading them like that. But I look at this whole thing and I look at how just generally her existence as it was made her immensely vulnerable regardless. So I'm like, so what if she had figured it out? Like, I just really wonder, like within the world of the film, if she had figured it out when she was like 5 months or 4 months or whatever, would her fate have been any different? You know, and I'm not sure that it would have, because she was completely and utterly surrounded.
And like any abuser, he had cut her off from her support system.
Yeah. The scene where she has the party with all of her old friends, all of her real friends, and she has been told by Saperstein and backed up by Guy on the whole, don't listen to women when it comes to women's bodies. Don't listen to women about pregnancy and those sorts of things and those experiences. Listen to me. Don't read books. Don't listen to women. Listen to me. And then when she's got these actual women around who are like, excuse me, this is not appropriate. This is not okay. Guy tries to walk in. They physically shove his happy ass out the door, slam the door in his face, and lock him out of his own kitchen. And I just loved it. I was just like, yes, like even knowing that it was going to prove ineffectual, watching that. And when you listen to their advice, it's not based on anything, you know, weird, like that Saperstein was like, wow, you've been reading too many books and that's an old wives' tale. Literally all they say is like, listen to your body. If there's pain like that, it's telling you something's wrong. Listen to your body. And that's the soul, that's the sum of the wisdom, but it's exactly right. And it's exactly what she needed to know. So, I mean, I love that scene. Like, I wish I could just like, you know, end the movie right there. Maybe they open the window and shove Guy out and he screams to his death.
He splats on the sidewalk.
That's going to be my Rosemary's Baby fanfic.
Yep. Like Wile E. Coyote, just splats.
Yeah, but more fatal. Yes.
Yep.
I already like it better.
Yeah, that was one of the only like glimmers of hope in the movie, was when she was talking with her friends. The other one was when she showed some resistance and independence by cutting her hair. And then is like immediately slapped down by Guy when she gets home. Later, he tells her that cutting her hair was the worst mistake she ever made.
Which is hilarious.
Which is
because
so
really
funny.
marrying him was.
Yes.
Also, her hair looked fabulous. I loved it. Mia Farrow could really rock that particular cut.
I found out that she did that herself. She cut her own hair that short.
I think she actually went to Vidal Sassoon, but it was her.
They staged it. They
did.
So she had cut it. Vidal Sassoon made her wig when she earlier in the movie when she has longer hair. Like Vidal Sassoon was involved. They made her wig, but she apparently had cut her own hair that short. But then they did like this press stunt where they had like cameras and stuff come and watch her get her hair cut. But it was actually just them like cutting like a little half-inch off, like sort of pretending. She'd already done that herself, which I thought was like very brave, you know.
Yeah,
and obviously
very.
she could afford for someone else to do that. So
yeah,
wow.
There were a lot of weird little things I found out that were like sort of like not funny, but funny, not funny. Roman Polanski convinced her to run out into real traffic on Fifth Avenue. In that scene when she's hugely pregnant at the end and she's trying to run away. He said, "Oh, no one will hit a pregnant woman on Fifth Avenue. Just do it." And like she did. She like ran out into real traffic.
And it really looked to me, I was like, yeah, this is very New York. They don't seem like they're going to stop. Like so many of them got like right up onto her. And I was like, that does seem very New York. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think this Roman Polanski guy isn't a good guy.
What? He's misunderstood. I just want to. No, he's not.
Holy shit! No, I thought that scene looked amazing, and now that I know why,
it's real.
Feeling bad about how much I liked it.
He was the one filming it because he was the only one dumb enough to go out there with her. Like he had a handheld camera; no one else would run into traffic, and so he was using the little handheld to like film that. And I'm just like, the fact that Mia Farrow did that, and the whole time she doesn't even look. The absolute commitment and bravery to just like, she did that. I watched her. She never glanced. She never even looked up. It was very like this. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
I'm not saying anybody should get hit by a car, but can you imagine if the story was that that's how Roman Polanski died? Like, that'd be kind of interesting.
It would be.
Okay with that. Yep.
They get Tim Burton for the other half of the film. Let's set aside the fact that he was not directing at that point.
Man.
Okay. So, do you want to go into historical context then? Because we've got a lot. We got a lot there. Okay. So, we've got the beginning of like the satanic panic that had like fully gripped, by late 70s, 80s. But that was like creeping in. Also, what I thought was really cool is that headline on the Time magazine that Rosemary picks up later in the film, that was real. The Time cover that said, "Is God dead?"
Yeah.
So people were like having real fears about this. They were all worried about June of 1966. They're like, "Oh, 666. Oh no, it's the number of the beast," And of course, like nothing, the devil didn't really come out. But the Vietnam War was raging, and in 66, the death toll of U.S. military personnel tripled. So the population of American men 18 to 25 was just like obliterated. There were a few exceptions, of course, for people to avoid the draft. And one of them was college. And the other one was being like deemed mentally or physically unfit. But of course, that privileged people with money, because if you weren't in college, if you didn't have money to go to college and you didn't have a doctor's note, if you couldn't afford medical care, so we had a bunch of poor people and minorities getting sent over to Vietnam with the richer boys, being able to avoid it in some cases. So
Thank
we
God
had that.
We've changed all that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So we had all of this in the background. But we also had a couple of mass murders occurring in 1966. A shooter killed 16 people at the University of Texas, and 8 nursing students were murdered in Chicago. The year before, in 1965, race riots left 34 dead in California. So all of this was in the news, and all of this was in the background of this book coming out and this movie being made. So it was like death was on everyone's mind. And then we also had like the church, coming into this conversation, and in a way that all kind of made sense. Like it made sense that the church people were all upset. And it also made sense that just like regular everyday people had this renewed interest in horror and in the occult. It was like this refreshed interest that was a natural response, because it was really hard for everyone to accept that humans were doing all of these horrific things, right? Like humans had started the war, humans were killing each other, humans were committing these mass murders, all of these things. And so it was kind of like this handy scapegoat, even if it was fictional, to be like, oh, well, like it's the devil made them do it. Like what's the evil lurking beneath society? It's not really humans, it's the devil's influence and shit like that. So it was like we had that response in both the churchy people freaking out, and we had like the everyday American turning to horror as like a way to work out their anxieties. And this is how we got Rosemary's Baby, like just as I don't know. I think we could call it a cultural milestone, kind of. I think in this climate, that's what it counted as.
Well, I think it definitely is. Like the fact that it's not even that we're covering it. Like we cover all kinds of weird stuff, but like if you talk to like anybody, they've probably at least heard of it, even if they haven't seen it. And most people know the bare basics of the story, or at least they know the end and the big reveal, So when you say it's a cultural milestone, I don't think that that's overplaying it at all. And if say my son watched it today, he would be like, oh, that's boring. It took too long. And I knew this was coming like 10 minutes into the film. And yeah, of course you did, because you've since seen 250 movies that were influenced by Rosemary's Baby. It's why Psycho doesn't scare the shit out of me anymore. Like it doesn't hit me the way it did at the time for that same reason. But Psycho is another one that I would consider a cultural milestone, and there's a reason that there's these certain movies that we're still talking about, and we're still drawn to, and I don't think that's overplaying it at all.
I don't either. And there's a part of me that's like, I would love to like have just like attended numerous of these screenings, like in the theater, and then watched the behavior of couples as they were leaving. I would really, really like to,
man.
because like, I mean, because genuinely, like when you see it happening to someone else on screen and you look, this is ludicrous how much this man is controlling her, that everything is at his whim. Like while I totally agree that when two people decide to procreate, it should be a joint decision, the whole concept of like, yes, Rosemary, I grant you a baby now. I shall do so. I shall give this to you. I am being so magnanimous. And, oh, God. And I'm just like, the complete message there is so infuriating. So I honestly wonder, like, whether it did contribute some, like you were talking about all the things that were going on in the background, like of women's rights and like civil rights and everything that was going on. And I wonder how many people got kind of revved up by it. And Rebecca, to the people who are listening, Rebecca was talking before we started recording about the history of Mia Farrow being married to Frank Sinatra at the time, and the way that, given some filming schedules was going on, he was attempting to pressure her to quit Rosemary's Baby to come work on his movie. And part of me wonders, like, if Mia Farrow's sitting there, with this dress on and like this plot that she's been immersed in of being controlled by all these people, like, I wonder how much of an effect that had on her, saying like, actually, Frank, go fuck yourself. Like whether anybody who's immersed in that and really seeing it could even make themselves make that kind of, give in like that at that time. I just think that's such an interesting piece of it. I really do. I hadn't realized that about Sinatra divorcing her over that.
And also Sinatra had made comments in the past because he was engaged to a dancer at one point, and he called off the engagement because he said, I don't want a woman who works. I want a woman who's going to be home making my dinner. And so then we have Mia Farrow saying, no, I'm finishing my movie, and him divorcing her. And also at that time, Mia Farrow was 23 and Frank Sinatra was something like 53. So we did have the power imbalance, right? Not just in like fame and, gender rights of the day, but we had the imbalance that we have in the movie too. So Laura, like you were saying, it very much could have been that she was like, wait a minute, my life is fucked up. And, sort of like, have you all ever had to like break up with yourself or like cause a breakup sort of? And I'm wondering if she, like, did she make him dump her? I don't know. Like, and maybe subconsciously, but maybe she was just like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Maybe she did the one thing she knew that he would not approve of. I don't know. It seems like a maybe.
Well, and then you add in, like, that would be impressive for the day with any husband. This is Frank fucking Sinatra. Like this guy can destroy your career. He's got mob ties. We all know this. And she had to know some crazy shit we don't know, and she still did it. Like, I absolutely, I'm guessing, because obviously I have no evidence, but I absolutely think living this character would have to feed that decision and that fear of letting somebody control you on that level. And given that it's Sinatra and his absolute power in everything, that guy had the ability to control anything, let alone his wife, so holy shit, that's impressive.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you think about, like, so he wants to be a trad husband, he wants a trad wife. Why is he seeking mates who are successful in their fields? Why is he not hooking up with people, that who have that goal, who want to? Because I am sure that the world was chock full of women who would be like, of course I will totes be home making your dinner. But instead he's going after people like Mia Farrow and a dancer that he's engaged to. Like, these are successful women, driven women who have busted ass to get where they're going. So you go and select someone from that category and then try to make them do this other thing. It's the whole part of it is controlling. It's can I make you do this?
Yeah, the power rush.
And it's also being attracted to a driven individual. Like, your goal for them isn't that, with him, obviously, but like, I would think that the women that you're talking about would bore the shit out of him. Like, he needs that thing that interests him to begin with, but then he needs to destroy it and control it, right?
At which point I have a feeling he would then lose interest in it and, accuse
absolutely.
them of letting themselves go or something. Yeah.
So fuck Frank Sinatra as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we have a list going at this point. So.
Well, they do seem to have a type. So, our list seems to have a type.
We're going to meet more of them too. Also, there was said to be a curse on this movie or from this movie, where everyone involved was hitting all this bad luck. And it's more likely that there was no curse because we've heard this before, right? Didn't The Exorcist have that same
right? Yeah,
poltergeist, like, oh, it's a curse, it's a curse.
Yeah.
So they said that this was cursed, but I don't want to say it's overwhelming evidence, but I'm just saying anyone who did think there was a curse would have some evidence to back it up. So we've talked about Mia Farrow, learning on set, like Frank Sinatra's lawyer came up to her while she was like essentially filming this movie and was like, hey, Frank's divorcing you. Another victim of the curse was the composer of the movie's musical score, Christoph Komeda. He was only 37 in 1968. He had an accident, fell into a coma, and died. And that's like horrible, but people also thought it was more than a coincidence because something very similar happened to two characters in the movie, right? So it was
Hutch. I was going to say.
Yeah.
Hutch falls into a coma and dies, and so does Mrs. Gardenia, the former tenant of Guy and Rosemary's apartment, which is like a throwaway comment that I had to catch on my second recent viewing. was that the same thing happened to Gardenia. So like death by witchcraft, essentially. Then we had the producer, William Castle, in 1969. He was getting like hate mail and death threats for making this movie. And he was like sick with all this worry and stress. And he got some really bad kidney stones. He wound up in the hospital. And during that time, he had such a high fever that he was hallucinating scenes from the movie and screaming for Rosemary to drop the knife.
Oh, God.
Yeah. He eventually recovered, but he never made a hit movie again. Spooky.
Wow.
Yep. Roman Polanski, do we like, oh gosh, this is like a whole.
Yeah, that's not a curse.
I feel like,
that's a jackass.
That's Roman being a curse to everybody else.
How about the fact he didn't get hit by those cars is the curse?
Yeah. So this is 10 years before he drugged and assaulted a 13-year-old girl. But at the time of making this movie, he was dating Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate wanted to be Rosemary and didn't get the part. She's an extra, apparently, in the movie's party scene. I didn't slow it down enough to try to catch her. But apparently Sharon Tate's there in the background. She was also in the background of the set. She sort of haunted the movie set, like just creeping around in the background. And people say that she had her own interest in the occult that happened because of her time spent on this movie. Anywho, later, of course, she's married. She's pregnant by Polanski and is murdered by the Manson cult. Well, so some people said that because of her involvement with the movie, the curse hit her. Others were saying that Polanski either had her killed or like jinxed her life somehow because his career just skyrocketed after this movie, much the way Guy Woodhouse's career skyrockets after he sells his own wife, like down the river in the storyline. So, make of that what you will. We talked about how if Polanski were truly cursed, he would be dead by now, a long time ago. But I would kind of believe that he made his own deal with the devil. Like, that's something that I would buy. He's still alive. Yeah. He's making movies. He's rich. He's just doing whatever he wants. Yeah. Just hanging out in like France, I think, and the Alps. Just
and people who protest that get their own careers fucked over, which again, really, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So he might be a devil deal maker himself. And then last little bit was that John Lennon was killed across the street from where the movie was filmed. So they're like roping him into the curse, even though it was 12 years later. I think that's a stretch.
Yeah.
It's a stretch, even for conspiracy theorists. But
Lennon lived in the Dakota, which is the building. So,
oh my gosh.
I mean,
can we talk about the Dakota? James has done research on the Dakota. We need to talk about the Dakota.
I didn't do a lot. I just I'm fascinated by buildings. Like I love the show Only Murders in the Building. I don't know if you guys have watched it.
So good.
But like that building, I'm obsessed with it. I want to go there and I want to see it. And like when I go to LA, I will go to like I went to the building that was used for Asylum on American Horror Story, and I went to Murder House and stuff like that. And I can't get in. I'm literally just outside, like, look, there's the building, and that's it. And but I have an obsession with cool looking buildings, and the Dakota is an amazing looking building. And so I just pulled it up on Wikipedia because I'm always like, somebody famous lived there. And this building has this huge list. I don't know a lot of people, but they're like, playwrights or producers or different things I don't know. But then like John Lennon lived there. Judy Garland lived there at one point. A couple others that I don't recall off the top of my head now, but just like it's all these like big names, and then Maury Povich, which I only remember because Rebecca was making fun of that. And
it's funny. It's a funny thing.
But yeah, so then I was picturing Maury Povich like talking to Rosemary about the father of the baby. I find that really funny. But
Guy, you are not.
Survey says.
Guys' eyes are normal. Guys, not the father. But just Anyway, no, so I find it interesting that Lennon's pulled into that because he did live in the building. So
He did.
I can see how they got there. I mean, they think the earth is flat, so I can see how they got there with Lennon across the street.
Right.
So
and I don't think we said, so the Dakota is the real building that was filmed in the movie, but only the exterior. The exterior shots are of the Dakota in Manhattan. The fictional building is called the Bramford, which Levin it's a little bit of a wink to Bram Stoker. The Bramford.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so those were all the exterior shots. The interior shots were not the real Dakota. Those were just the Paramount sound studio. Those were just, Hollywood movie sets, the interior of it. But the Dakota, as James showed me his research, was built in 1880. Yep. And it is the oldest luxury apartment building in New York. And yes, full of theater people and movie stars, which is why, just like in the story, that's why Guy wanted to live there, because he thought, living in the Bramford would open up doors for him, because he would be rubbing elbows with all the fancy people.
I was just going to say, I look at this layout and how they chopped apartments to build other apartments. And so I'm looking at how big this apartment was to start with. Yep. And then I'm like, man, what would that cost in New York today?
12-foot high ceilings,
Right.
But the building is part of what makes Rosemary's Baby a modern Gothic. So we have all that info on the Bramford. And right down to the fact that it was somewhat decaying, that they had to really put a lot of money into fixing up their apartment. But it's huge, it's hulking, and it's dark, and it's full of that beautiful architecture. And it's got all of the secret past stuff that Gothics always have. And it's also even got a hidden passage, which is Gothic all the way.
Pretty great.
Yep. Can we talk about when they first view the place and all the red flags that Rosemary ignored in that very moment?
Right.
It
could have been decorated in red flags and she wouldn't have noticed. She would have been just replace that with yellow wallpaper. It'll be fine.
Oh my gosh. I talk about the yellow. So they go and Rosemary and her husband Guy, who's this struggling actor, and it's so childish the way she's always spitting out his 3 resume lines at everyone they meet to prove that he's legit. And it's yes, you did the Yamaha commercial. Congratulations, Guy. But they're touring this place, and the last tenant was Mrs. Gardenia. She was an 89-year-old woman, and none of that is suspicious, right? An 89-year-old woman died. They're looking at her place. But the realtor makes a point to mention that she was one of the first successful female lawyers in New York. And now we don't, there's nothing strange about a successful female lawyer, but back then it would have been sort of notable that there was this very successful female lawyer, which later we're oh yeah, because she was in the cult, right? She got her success from, selling out to the Bramford cult. There's all these witchy herbs in the kitchen. There's a note that Rosemary sees that says, I can no longer associate myself with them. And she's just And then they find this gigantic, they call it a secretary, but it's this huge wooden piece of furniture, 9 feet high. And it's been shoved against a linen closet in the hallway. It takes 2 men to move it. Guy and the realtor are let's see what's behind here. And they move this huge thing, and it's a linen closet. And Rosemary's I wonder why she would block up her towels and vacuum cleaner. And they were also how would an 89-year-old woman move that? Which we never get the answer to that mystery. But she did. And again, it's all this stuff, and Rosemary's just oh, whatever, it's fine. None of this is suspicious in any way. Let's take this apartment. And she begs Guy like a little kid who wants ice cream, which is another one of those it's gross how much of a little kid they made her into, but it's also so effective because it's in every scene. I kept getting Alice in Wonderland vibes from her. She wears she even has the headbands on, and she had the little girl hairstyle. She wears those
which is
Peter
little
Pan
pigtails
collars,
in. Yeah.
Mary Jane shoes. Everything about the way they dressed her up was here's an innocent little girl. So she was 23, but looked 17. In the first scene, she's even wearing white.
I wonder why Polanski did that.
I know. It's of course, Polanski would style her even younger than 23, But every time she talks to Guy, it's she's begging her daddy. Oh, in one scene, she jokingly calls him daddy, and I almost threw up in my mouth.
Oh, God.
So
I
don't remember that, and I'm glad.
Yeah. It's when he's trying to make her eat the drugged chocolate mousse.
Oh, right.
And she's like, I don't want it. And he's like, you're ungrateful,
I know the manipulation with all of those small things, like what you eat, where you live, how you decorate things, when and if you procreate, who you associate with, what you're allowed to read, and everything. I don't know. It's just, he's so fucking sickening. And
in every scene, there's not a single scene where I like him. Not even in the beginning.
No, not even
I hated him instantly.
Yeah. And I kind of hate that Ned Beatty has such a hard time after Deliverance, after that one scene. And I'm like, why didn't this guy's career get fucked? Why didn't every time he get on set, someone go, ew, you get out. No, I don't want to work with you. It was a part. I don't care. Those lips are real. Get out. Not gonna look at him.
Yeah. But even moving the big cabinet thing, he complains about it the whole time, and he's like, "Oh, that was so hard." And I love how that makes him kind of like quote unquote wimpy, because the landlord's doing just fine. And I just loved how that kind of knocked Sky down a peg for us, even though it doesn't for Rosemary in any way. It was just this nice little he needs assistance. He needs to sell out to this cult, and he needs help because he can't handle it on his own. He'd be a very big he'd be doing the open AI commercials today.
Yeah. Yeah, the insecurity that rolls off of him even via Rosemary is so well done. The way she's always like, oh, he did these 2 plays, and he does a lot of commercials and blah blah blah, sticking up for him so much. It's it's so pathetic. He is so pathetic in the minute we meet him.
Well, she's responsible for his emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
She's responsible for it if he is upset about not getting a part, if he's feeling down on himself, if he's angry about something, if he's sad about something, if he's frustrated. She's responsible for every aspect of that.
Yep.
Fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Piece of shit guy.
Where the phrase "this fucking guy" comes from.
This fucking guy.
Specifically, this guy.
This guy.
I love that his name's Guy. It just
I know it's
everything.
still generic. It's
he's just Guy.
We could call him Dude Bro, and it would be the same.
Just representative male insert.
This is what we do with every movie that Rebecca covers. In our last one, we had Fuckboy, and in this one, we have Dude Bro. So
yeah. We just hate on characters together, and it's a lot of fun. All right, another red flag Rosemary totally ignores is when Hutch, their kind ex-landlord, who is a father figure and who wants nothing but the best for these people. Poor Hutch. Hutch tells them about the Bramford's troubled past, earning it the nickname the Black Bramford, that there were stories of witchcraft and murder around the turn of the century. We had the Trench sisters who ate babies. They cooked and ate babies.
The use of the name Trench is funny there too, because I'm assuming that's fictional. And it's you're really, you're going to use Trench, Trencherman, for they really got in there and ate a whole bunch of babies, It's
they got down in there.
Choice. Yeah.
Down and dirty. I keep interchanging cult and coven, so the cult leader, coven leader, turn of the century is Adrian Marcato, who got murdered by a mob in the lobby of the Bramford, allegedly, which is a great thing to picture. And Adrian Marcato had a son named Stephen. Rosemary says, well, there's a history of every building in New York. Come on now. And it's Rosemary, is there a history of literally eating babies in every building? Like, I don't think so, but she's just like, hey, stuff happens. And he's like, an infant was found, like a dead infant was found in the basement as recently as 1959. And she's just like, well, things happen. And that's the end of it.
Dead baby you wrapped in a newspaper or two. What are you going to do?
Yeah. All buildings have dead babies. Everybody knows that.
Everyone knows that. I mean, there are a dozen in your basement right now, probably.
Maybe when you get pregnant, you should start thinking back on these stories. Like, I should have been like, remember all the baby stories? Like, I don't know. Seems like it would come up.
We've talked about this, but Rosemary is like, she doesn't quite fit the figure of the classic Gothic heroine. Right. Like, and maybe in the book she does a little more, but in the movie, it's like she's not quite smart enough to fit the classic role, because in a Gothic story, we have a young woman who's desperate coming into a situation, and like her one weapon and her one defense she has is her intelligence in all of those stories. And so we have Rosemary who's like slow to catch on, is the way I'll put it. So we had a bit of a deviation there.
I will say though, I thought it was interesting the way that some of those deviations that she takes, some of those where she lets go a thread that if she'd followed it might have prevented some of this or might have put her in a better position. Like, there's reasons why that stuff happens. I think it's so interesting that as soon as she's really taking a stand about, no, I'm in pain, this is bad, no one's listening to me, and this means something bad, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want to do, then it stops. So naturally, then at that point, she's like, she feels the baby move for the first time. And then she's sort of like enraptured over that. And at that point, she sort of like redirects. So even though you kind of would hope that once she felt better, she'd be like, that was still kind of fucked up, man. She's just so, I don't think it's a mistake that after that you see the whole montage of like all of the commercial trappings of a baby. You've got the pretty little bassinet, and you've got the wicker crib, and you've got boxes full of bibs and, shit like that. All the kind of stuff that like prepares you for, taking care of a child so well. Decorate your nursery and you're good to go, but it's just it's like those sorts of distractions, it's interesting because then she just becomes this whole other person just completely focused on this thing.
You use redirected, which I think is the perfect word, because it happens so many times where like she thinks something's a bit weird or a bit wrong. And then she just they just kind of steer her. It's almost like a sleepwalker, they just sort of turn her and she's like, oh, okay. But that scene that you're talking about where the pain stops abruptly the night of the party, when she's about to like insist on getting a second opinion, that kind of cracks me up only because I picture the Antichrist, the fetal Antichrist inside of her listening, of course. And I picture him like this. You all can't see me, but I'm huddled up with my hands over my face. And I picture him like listening to his mom being like, I'm going to go get a second opinion. This isn't right. And I picture him going, oh shit, I have to stop hurting her. I have to stop sucking her dry. I've got to stop like kicking her from the inside, because otherwise, I might get found out. And it's like a little kid hiding, like, oh no, we gotta stop.
Oh, okay. I'll withdraw this blade from your uterus. My bad.
Yes.
I'll stop doing that. Didn't realize
I was thinking about the tail.
Yeah. Oh God.
Just stabbed into the side.
He like grabs his tail and he like pulls it in.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, the pain's gone. Yeah.
He tucks in his sharp little elbows and he like folds his claws in. And he's like, oh.
Fine, I'll shave down my goatee so it's not so prickly. Gosh.
I trimmed my nails just like Dad.
Oh, Jesus Christ. The fucking nail scene.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I already trimmed my nails with which I clawed your unconscious body.
Laurel, go ahead and take that scene, because that's one of the things so frustrating. Just go ahead. There's like, I had so many notes on that because it's like, it's gross that he's so like, he insists on the chocolate mouse so that she gets drugged anyways. And it's like, this whole like, well, no, honey, don't worry about it. We can try for a baby tomorrow. Just kidding. I'm totes going to rape you. And
he does. And like, it's just it's an odd scene with like her internal workings and sort of the hallucinations that go along with it. But it was interesting because you could sort of draw the parallels of where those things were going in her head. It's great when she sort of sits up and goes, this is no dream. This is really happening. And the horror of that moment really translates to it. But then the next morning, she wakes up, she's naked, she's clawed all over. She's obviously going to be sore in multiple places. And he's making a big joke out of it. And what really killed me too is when she says the word rape, and she's not even talking about him. She says, I dreamed someone raped me. And he is immediately so offended. Like, how dare you use the word of what was literally done to you last night? Like, how dare you use the word rape when you were raped last night? And, and the fact that after that, he can no longer look at her. Yep. He sold her body, but it's still her fault because she was his property. And now that's been sullied by like Satan's dick, which was completely and utterly his doing. But it's still, I don't know, it's just so completely revolting. But that instant, it's so well done, that instant offense on that, like, did you just use the R word with me? And it's like, yes,
and then he's offended that she said inhumane creature, or I think that's what the words were. He's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And it's like, she's not talking about you, dude. And what? But can I just say that I really want you to release a book now called Sullied by Satan's Dick. I think that's such a great title. Holy shit.
I feel like there's some other authors that title would go better for, but yeah, I'm gonna lay claim to it. I'm gonna lay claim to it. It's not like people are gonna think it's gonna be like some erotica thing, and it's just gonna be like this like eternal feminist rant that just goes on, and they'd be like, well, you know what, this is a Hightower book. You're right. That's what we should have expected, but. No, I don't know, just the whole like the ownership aspect of the whole thing, and just the grossness of it saying like it was kind of hot in a necrophiliac kind of way. I'm like, none of those words should go together at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, that was so disgusting.
Particularly when you're talking about, and I don't even know if at this point, and I think some of it was statutory too, as far as like when it was determined that marital rape existed and was a crime. But I'm fairly sure at this time that was not a thing. Like you could not claim something like marital rape. I'm guessing. I have not looked up the specific like years of those statutes or when something like that happened in New York. But I mean, I'm a paralegal, and when I was in school for that, one of my adjunct professors was a judge who had been instrumental in getting that passed in Kentucky. So given that wasn't that long ago, I'm like, I don't know. I'm fairly sure in New York that probably, if it had passed, it was probably recent. So, and just, I don't know, just that whole complete and utter ownership, but also responsibility for it. Like I own you. I can tell you what to do. I can do things to your inanimate body that you do not approve of. And she doesn't even get that mad. Like she's just kind of,
it doesn't cause a fight. It blew my mind.
Yeah. And it's just, and this isn't like because he's like, oh, I was pretty loaded myself. And it's like, this isn't some drunken fumbling where you were both kind of hammered and had some, nice little buzzed sex like that, you have this, sort of like mutual kind of like established relationship, kind of like, yeah, we were both hammered and we were both like able to consent though, like kind of thing. She was flat out gone. And he even says that when she says, oh, I fell asleep. And he said, you didn't fall asleep. You passed out. He's the one that points that out, but it's still totally okay for him to have taken advantage of her or, give the impression of him having taken advantage of her while she's completely out. It's just, I don't know, like that's just an unbelievable red flag. And it's just, she just sort of glosses over it. Like she's mildly annoyed at first, like, really? While I was out? And he's like, yep, it was hot. She's like, okay, like, cause you can also see so many times during this movie where it's like, this offends, like this creates a sense of offense in me. I'm taken aback by it. I feel uncomfortable about it, but I'm mowed over so quickly and mocked and made to feel as though there's something wrong with me for having an issue with this. And that is such a consistent gaslighting technique within the movie. And then just generally,
all the time, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep. So I made the mistake of Googling it to find out the answer for you. And no marital rape was illegal in the United States until around 1974. And it became illegal in all 50 states in 93.
Yep.
And So if you watched because you guys have video and our listeners don't, but if you watched my face as I got really pissed off there, that's why.
That makes sense. I mean, that's horrific. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. But yeah. So anyway, thanks, Judge Klaus. Kentucky. Appreciate you being instrumental in that. Yeah.
Also, I want to point out that it was all immediate. So like when you go back and you look at like the time frame. So the first night they have drinks with the Castavets, which are the neighbors and the sort of heads of the current heads of the cult, seems like. They're over there having drinks, and the women are, of course, doing the dishes in the kitchen, and they come back out, and the men sort of hush up. They've been talking about something, they shut right up. And then the very next day, Guy, who had been making fun of this older couple and like saying they were weird and annoying, is like, yeah, so I'm going to go hang out with Roman tomorrow night. He's so interesting. And she's like, I thought you thought they were weird. And he's like, no, he's a cool guy. And of course, Roman's flattering his acting the whole time and saying how great he is. So,
but he very specifically says, as long as you get those necessary lucky breaks.
Yep. He's like, you got to get the roles to get the attention. And so the very next night, Rosemary says she doesn't want to go, but her peace and quiet is like immediately ambushed by Mrs. Castavet, whose name is Minnie.
That is still such a devastating. I know there's a lot of devastating scenes in this movie, but it crushed my soul. Yes. She's laying down on the couch. She's got her music playing. She's opened a book. And then these bitches come in.
Yep.
Ugh.
And they just steamroll her in every scene. These older women, they just they open the door, like they come in without being invited. She's sort of saying, come in, but they're already coming in. And they're like pushing past her. And they totally kind of take over her night with dumb shit.
They sit down and knit. Did you need to come over here to knit? Yep.
And it's like, what's worse than barging in on someone's private time is barging in, but then bringing a stranger with you. No one wants that. But this whole time is kind of like diverting attention from the fact that Roman and Guy are alone. And it's this very night, I think, that she's drugged with chocolate mousse. And
I think it's a few nights later.
Is it a few?
Because at this point my recollection, I could be wrong, but my recollection was that, she tells them it's the first day of her period, which I immediately and I look at that parallel now too, because I'm like, it's no longer safe in this country to inform medical professionals about your cycle, let alone rando strangers. I get, and I love my doctor. She's somebody I've literally known since we were 5. And I trust her, but when she just, as going through notes and stuff, she's like, and when she was like, it's regular. I'm just like, you're not putting that in notes. I'm sorry. No one is going to. Has nothing to do with her. She's absolutely wonderful. But, and I don't trust anybody. I mean, any doctor I go to, which again, it's a meme. It's so ridiculous now, but literally no matter where you go, you can go to the eye doctor. When was the date of your last cycle? Why the fuck do you care? What does that have to do with literally anything? So she tells these rando bitches it's the first day of her cycle. That
was weird too. That was
it was very weird.
Why would you just say that to someone you don't know? They're like, you look a little pale, and she's like, oh yeah, well, I got my period. It's that's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a reasonable. I don't know. Not that it's something that you should be afraid to talk about or ashamed to talk about, but it's odd. And I immediately was like, oh, you're giving them information they shouldn't have.
Yep.
And then it's a little while later when Guy's because she goes to see Hutch. She's upset because Guy's been a dick face.
Yep.
And then she comes home and he's like, I'll go ahead and grant you some sperm, baby. I got you some sperm for your gift, and it's that night that
everything happens.
Yeah. That she brings the chocolate mouse over and everything. Yeah.
But I can't imagine just the betrayal of someone suggesting to your partner, hey, I will grant you career success if you consent to letting us abuse your wife's body in whatever ways we want to and violate her in whatever ways we want to.
I would get arrested right there.
Guy is oh yeah, let's just give me 2-3 days.
Right. You're
Like,
so
it's
right about the
right-
instantaneous nature of that. There's no convincing needed.
There's not even like, he doesn't think about it for a week or two. He doesn't like whatever that time frame is, it is so short. It's like he immediately agreed to this and then the plan was in action.
Yeah.
They told him she wouldn't be hurt, so isn't that good enough?
Oh my God. At the end, I was like, I don't know. I think I wanted to murder him more at the end, even than in the I didn't want to miss baby night scene, when he says to her, they promised me you wouldn't get hurt, and you didn't.
And?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's no big deal if you carry a baby to term and it dies. You're not really hurt, babe. This is fine. Now we can have some more because they're totally interchangeable.
That's the part that gets me right there. And we can have more. Like, this one didn't matter. We can have another one. They're
We
all the
can
same.
donate one to the cult. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
You're being
I wasn't
selfish.
kidding. When I say every scene makes me want to hurt him more, I mean, it's literally chronological. There's no time that I'm ever like, oh, well, that's not as bad as that thing I saw before. No, this guy just gets worse. And if there was any red flag that does it for me, when he says he's tracking it on the calendar, I'm like,
yeah.
I know.
I'm like, you don't even know what you're tracking. Number one, don't give me that. And number two, even if you were tracking it for these nefarious purposes, why are you announcing it to her? This guy's terrible at manipulating, by the way. He gives up so easily and gets angry instead of doing the things that would help him make this go faster. But like, why would you announce it? Why would you openly track it where she can see it? And why does she not question that he knows how to do this? Like,
and legit, like it took me 3 years to get pregnant. I definitely had to do a whole lot of shit down that road. Tracks, shit, temperatures, goddamn, all that fucking bullshit. Even in the midst of that, as immersed as I was in it, if my husband had been like, oh, I was trying to be like, excuse you, sicko. What is your bottom line here? I don't trust you anymore, you fucking weirdo. Never mind.
Call me weird, but I don't want to know. Like, just tell me when. I'll be there. It's fine.
Like,
And then,
like, be sympathetic. Be nice to somebody. But that's the whole thing about it. He's not ever
Nice.
the thing with the pain.
Never.
And he doesn't care about it until she makes it a problem for him. But she's been dealing with this excruciating internal pain, which, and this isn't singular to women. It is my impression, it's my feeling that pain that deals with like your reproductive organs in any way, it can be so much more insidious somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. There's so much going on with it, and when you are pregnant, there are so many pains. There's so many pains, and there's Braxton Hicks contractions. There's there's round ligament pain, which is absolutely fucking excruciating, and you do get told a lot like, most women don't feel it, or it's not really going to hurt you. Keep walking. Because I was a power lifter before I got pregnant, and I planned to lift up until my doctor told me 3rd trimester, you have to quit because it's too much like pushing. You have to stop then. So I planned to work out my ass off, which now I think is hilarious. But I got round ligament pain to the point where I could not even walk around the block. And now my doctor was not like, oh, you still need to be walking. She was like, dude, that sucks. Yeah, put your feet up, But there are a lot of people who are like, well, you really need to be doing it to stay healthy. And it's like walking around the block like I will fall to my knees. Like, I don't know. But you just get told that,
You made me think of that scene with Dr. Saperstein, who is the culty OBGYN, when she's telling him about her pain and he gets that little dig in, that passive aggressive when he tells her, usually it's only older women who have pain like this. Like it's like he's trying to shame her into not complaining.
It's a failure on your part.
Yes.
You don't want to be this. You don't want to be this.
There's something wrong with you. Like everything else, right? It's always her fault.
Yeah. Oh God. One of the last lines he has when they're like, oh, well, the baby died. I was trying to get you to a hospital, but you just wouldn't listen. When her like last lucid screaming words are doctors, hospitals, sterile.
Yep.
As well as you were just so out of control. And they do so well. Like this movie accomplished what it wanted to. There's a reason I'm enraged. I was meant to be. And not, I do not feel like, I don't like Roman Polanski. He's a piece of shit, but I don't feel like this is a manipulative feeling that I've been given. I'm angry because this is real. I'm angry because it's still fucking applicable, you know? And it's just, I don't know. You're not even a person when they've got her pinned down and he is, without asking, he's touching her. He's grabbing her belly. He's feeling all over it. And like, I had a female OB, and even I was seeing her for that exact reason, you know, and towards the end of pregnancy, you're there every week. And I was high risk because I'm old. And, you know, but she would always, like, there was consent before she would touch me. And to watch these old men just like clutching all over her was just the vulnerability that's represented there. And simply the vulnerability of being as pregnant as she was. She did a great job. You know, she's walking down the hallway. She's too little to really have been like, oh, I'm going to waddle, because you could see it's sort of this, you can't move fast, you know, and you have an impending medical condition that will put you at great risk. And it's coming in the very near future and you don't know when. You are massively vulnerable at that point in time. And Dr. Hill's betrayal, I actually realized as I was rewatching this, I never finished the movie when I watched it before, because Dr. Hill's betrayal was so devastating to me, I couldn't bear to continue. I could not bear to continue. Even having read it before and I knew it was coming, it was so devastating that I was just like, no, I can't continue to watch this.
And they tell her to come quietly.
And he grabs her up by her arm like that.
Yep. Put your shoe. He yells at her twice. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. And it's so like yelling, like scolding a little kid. You know, it's awful. And they basically frog march her to the car. You know, like if I saw people doing that to a person on the street, I would be like, "What the fuck are you doing? What is going on?" Like that person is not going with you willingly.
And because they sit on either side of her too.
Yep.
They wedge her in between them.
Yep.
In the back seat of the car.
And you
really
can tell that
fascinating.
the guy can barely look at her. You know, it's like he's not ashamed for the right reasons. No. You know what I mean? But like toward the end, he can barely look at her. And I'm like, God, I hate you so much. I hate you. I hate you, guy.
I thought it was so weird that the doctor gets in the car the way he does. Like he could walk around and go to the door, and I would have thought that was more normal. But he drags her there and then like climbs in himself. But he's not like still holding on to her. Like if he was still, I would kind of get it, but it just looked so awkward to me. And I don't know why they did it that way.
In that, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
No. Yeah, go ahead. Cause it was more just kind of an observation on the whole, like, again, it's so prescient because it's this like, you're being ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. We are actively right now kidnapping you.
Yes.
And you are you should be ashamed of we were so embarrassed. We're all so embarrassed by your behavior. You know, you're being totally, it's like they're like loading the gun. I just can't believe you think that I would be, bam, you know, like I'm just offended that you think I'm a risk to you. Body bleeding on the ground, you know, like just.
And it's still like that scene, but they've now gotten back to the Bramford and she gives them the slip by the elevators. And it's, again, a moment where you're like, oh, is she going to get away? And you know she's not going to, right? But you still have that like tense feeling in your chest watching it. The music is so effective in that moment. It's like really fast, frenetic jazz. And it made me feel so anxious. Like it was a physical response to that music and that scene where she's trying to fumble to get into her apartment. And the whole time she thinks that if she just gets inside and locks the door, she's safe. But we all know that there's the secret passageway from the Castavets and they're going to be there in 30 seconds.
Him reaching in when he unlocks the door and she's got the chain and he's reaching. I mean, that's worse than any like tentacle or monster, you know, like reaching in. It's just like this, very effective.
so much in the movie that is like very, obviously like a very literal crossing of boundaries, like when they are violating her body and taking control of her life. But there are all these little symbolic things too that show that, like the way their apartment used to be part of the Castavets and the way the sound comes through the wall so easily, which, by the way, another thing Rosemary ignored was like culty chanting coming from the Castavets, but whatever. And so we have like all of these trespasses, that kind of foreshadow those that are about to come. It's done so well. Like you can see why the critics loved it. You can see why the church hated it. It was done so well. Which apparently there's more religious content in the novel than in the movie, because Laurel, you brought up those dream sequences and how they make more sense in the novel than in the movie. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of those, we got a lot of like religious content, like when they're on that yacht and Guy tells her Hutch can't come because it's Catholics only.
Was that supposed to be Guy? Because I actually thought that was supposed to be representative of JFK. Because Guy was not Catholic. And I sort of noticed, and I could be wrong, I just noticed like I didn't recognize who that was. But when she says, "What about Hutch?" the man standing next to her did not look to me like Guy. And he sort of sounded like Bostonian, like, "Oh, it's not fair, but yeah, only us Catholics."
I thought that was Guy, but I could have missed it.
I'm not sure.
I want to go back and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue it, but I got the impression that was, I don't know, that there was supposed to be a reference to JFK. I mean, we got the Pope, why not JFK too?
That's interesting to me. That's interesting to me because I'm directly between you two on this. I thought that it was supposed to be Guy, but he felt really weird to me. So like, I'm not really where either of you were. Like, I felt like it didn't look like him and it didn't sound like him, but I still thought it was him. So I don't know, like the whole thing was very strange to me.
Well, and in those moments we have a dream figure being more than one person, right? Like in the first dream sequence, we had a nun, and almost like a bad dubbing job, we had Minnie Castavet's voice coming out of the nun's mouth, and that was, of course, referencing Terry, the unfortunate predecessor to Rosemary. And it seemed in some way, it never really went into Terry. And I'm interested in Terry's story. Like, I very much want to know Terry's story. The young woman living with the Castavets who allegedly killed herself, except she seemed like not like someone who would kill herself. And there's an argument between Minnie and Roman Castavet the night before, and Minnie's yelling, "You need to be 100% sure. You need to be 100% sure before you do whatever." And then the very next night, Terry dies / is killed. And then we have Rosemary having this dream with this nun saying, "This is your fault. If not for you, we wouldn't have to start over from scratch."
Just want to say, I did just look it up, and it was supposed to be, she finds herself on a yacht with the first family and briefly speaks to Kennedy.
Oh,
wow. Depicted in the 1968 film version, but the identity of the Kennedys is not made clear. But that does make sense. See, I didn't pick up that Jackie O was there too, but I do, when I think back, I'm like, yeah, they did have an actress who kind of resembled her.
You know what? I was wondering who that was supposed to represent. It's in another dream sequence. It's this woman with dark hair. And I was like, that looks kind of like Terry, but it's not. And now I know who it is.
Oh, yeah. The one in the veil?
Yes.
Who came down and was like,
oh, that's supposed to be?
Secure your legs in case there's convulsions.
Yes.
I thought that was supposed to be Terry too. But then I was like, but it doesn't quite look like her.
Figured it out together. Good job. Go team.
Nice. And I apologize for interrupting you. I'm sorry. You were on a whole nother thing, but I was like, oh my God.
That was bothering me because in that moment, because right, everyone sort of represented someone, although I missed the Kennedy part, but I was like, who is this woman coming down the stairs? And she sort of looked like a bride of Dracula. Like she was in like long flowing white bridal, whatever. And I didn't know who that was supposed to represent, but now that makes all kind of sense. But anyway, I think that Terry was supposed to get knocked up by the devil and it wasn't working out.
Well, they said something about you shouldn't have told her ahead of time.
I told you she wouldn't have had an open mind or something like that.
Yeah, that she wasn't open-minded enough for that. So yeah. And it's such an odd scene too when you meet the Castavets, like when they're strolling up and it's like, oh, the Sonyela, and they're like, I'll be darned. It sure is her brains all over the pavement. Whoa, no. It's so blasé.
Mm-hmm.
And many characters, like, as infuriating as she is, she's kind of great, though. Like, she's vulgar, and just like, so like, oh, what's the cost on this? And she's like established herself as a character with no real social boundaries, who's just kind of,
Yep.
so you're like, of course she might weirdly offer me some bizarre drink with like, sea monkeys in it to drink every morning and ask way too many questions. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that actress played it really well. And it was a really great character.
She won
In the grand
awards
scheme of
for that
character
role.
acting.
Yeah.
Good.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
She was horrible, but like, yeah, she was effective, like you said. And I also kind of feel like she's an exaggeration of people we know for real,
Mhm.
which is part of why the character was so effective.
Yeah.
Like we know that woman, Minnie, was just like turned up a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Than the real people we know. But yes, she did. And she was the only returning cast member in a sequel, a made-for-TV movie sequel. Came out in 1976. It's called Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. Patty Duke starred as Rosemary.
Wait, what year did that come out?
76.
76. I was like, because it sounds a little bit like Look Who's Talking. And I'm like, that would be a weird thing to try and piggyback off of. But
yes. And Minnie
Look who's coming to dinner and impregnating your wife.
It's the devil. Once again played by
no
Ruth
spoilers.
Gordon. And apparently Patty Duke also auditioned for the original role of Rosemary, along with Sharon Tate, and did not get. Everybody wanted that role.
They should have been better at it. I don't know what to say.
I know.
So I haven't read the book. Is the tannis root used the same way as like in the movie? It's supposed to like make her more compliant and make her not question things as much. And I think that they actually should have pointed that out more, because I feel like it can be lost really easily. But is that how it's used in the book, or is it used in the book? I've never read it.
I believe that's the same in the book, I think. But what made me laugh so hard, because I'm a child, is when she's reading the book, the witches. It's one of her witch books, and I don't remember if it's the
all
one
of them
gave
witches.
Her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just remembered that she had picked up a second book at the bookstore, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I think this was the Hutch book, but in there he had circled that tannis root was actually a fungus, and it was also called the devil's pepper. And that made me laugh so hard. And it made me think of like the devil's lettuce. And I don't know, it just cracked me up. I thought that was so fucking funny.
Well, if it was the devil's lettuce, Guy would have wanted it because he was trying to get some early on. So
it also, that's just, and I had to remember too, like this was like a certain time, but it sounded like the lamest, like out of touch boomer joke. Like, it's like, oh, here's my herb garden. Got some marijuana in there. Like, oh God, shut up. Jesus. Because he was so nasty too. He made fun of everyone. And it was so unpleasant, like it wasn't even funny. I guess some of that was supposed to showcase his like acting skills, like his mimicry, of the like property manager guy. It's like, yeah, he's awful. He told you the fireplace worked, and he told you what rooms there were in the history of it. What a jackass. What?
And helped you move heavy things.
Yes. That were hard for you to move.
I liked when Guy was like laughing and making fun of this old lady while they're doing it, and he like grabs the property manager's guy arm, and he's like clearly offended. He's like, "The fuck off me," And also, why are you making fun of kind people? You make no sense at all. And then he's like, "Well, have you seen enough? Because I'm out." I'm just like, "You've just been rejected by this guy. I just want you to be aware of that."
You should be rejected by everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe I should take back my thing about how he's not good at manipulating and how he just gets angry. Maybe that was showcasing what a terrible actor he is, that he can't even pull this off. And so that's why he needs this satanic coven to help him, because, he can't even act in front of his wife. So
I don't know. He's got her pretty fooled, I think.
I don't know. I think she's just very naive. Like, I don't even like that I used the word kind of dumb before. Like, I think she seems like the most naive individual I've ever seen. Like, she just accepts reality as it's handed to her, even before the fungus that's infecting her brain. Like, she just, I don't know. It's like she's never experienced anything before, so she just accepts what everyone hands her. And oh my gosh.
And just doesn't question, because again, like, I know I'm existing in a very different time frame, was raised very differently, but like the number of things Guy had opinions on that I would have been like, I don't think I asked. You know, it's like, well, if they gave you the necklace, you should wear it. I'd be like, cool story, bro. You know, and like
Yeah, right?
flush it away. Like, why do you even care? Why are you having an opinion? Why are you speaking? Did I ask for your opinion? Because I don't think so.
Oh,
Maybe I would be
he
Guy
called her
in this
friends
relationship.
bitches after the party.
Yeah.
I got so mad at him.
Yeah.
It's like, again, what do you know? Like, what do you know about women's bodies? What do you know about women's healthcare? Absolutely fucking nothing.
But you don't
But
need
yes.
that to make legislation and decisions
Right.
about women's healthcare.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is a woman doing that. They're hysterical.
Yes. Guy is every politician who thinks that they should make rules about women's bodies. Like, he is just every single one.
Charm, you know?
That does
And
explain why he sold her out in less than 2 days. So,
Yeah.
because that's what politicians would do.
Yeah, it would be completely immediate. The hysteria thing too, like, I watched this, I think it was called it was some like documentary on Netflix, and it was something about like death, like near-death experiences and that kind of thing. And they were interviewing this woman who was a doctor. And when she was pregnant with one of her children, she started getting these really intense premonitions that something bad was going to happen to her. And she got very upset by them, and she told her husband about it. And he was just like, whatever, it's just a feeling. And I can't remember the exact details of it. Basically, she ended up with a life-threatening condition in like her 3rd trimester. She almost died. The baby almost died. Like, she came really close to it. And it essentially like fulfilled like in very close detail what her original premonitions had been, which she had told people, so that it wasn't like, it was like, oh, I knew this was going to happen like after the fact when you haven't said anything. And I remember they're interviewing her, and she's standing in the kitchen with her husband, and she's been very like even keeled about talking about it all this time. And they ask him, and they're like, well, so what was your thinking? Like, you know, well, why didn't you believe her? Or what was your take on this? And he says, well, I just thought it was like one of those normal, like hysterical pregnancy things. The phrase normal hysterical pregnancy things was infuriating enough, but to see the just betrayal in her eyes, and you could see that this had wounded her deeply, like back then, that this is something that she's still probably carrying around, but the just gross way his tone kind of petered out, because you could tell, like, I think the interviewer was like a woman, and I just love to picture the cameraman being like, you know, like everyone in the room being like him, like deflating like a balloon, like, isn't that a thing? Aren't we all talking about hysterical women? You know, but it was just so crushing just to watch on her behalf, to act as though this biological function that you do, that, you know, anymore people are trying to force you to do, somehow makes you less of a human, and capable of making your own decisions, and capable of having your own impressions, and capable of regulating and understanding risk to yourself. It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing. And that was something that I feel like they did really, really well in this too, because again, you know, to go back to like, no one cared about this pain until she made it a problem for them. They just told her, like, whereas again, like if any of these men had experienced that pain, for I'm going to go ahead and give it like a 5-second mark, there would be an ambulance rushing down the road to them, you know, like they would be getting the best care in the world. In the meantime, you know, she's just supposed to like sit and rock and, you know, in her fluffy house slippers all day and cry in front of the television, because that's all she can do.
Yep.
As someone who has almost died from man flu several times, I 100% agree with this. And I wouldn't even go 5 seconds. It would be like the initial pain, and I would be like, I'm going to die. This is the end. But yeah, no. So I refuse to believe that most men are any better with this sort of thing than I am. So I'm just going to go ahead and generalize and say that none of us could fucking handle that. I agree completely.
But to look at, you know, but again, like, I'm not trying to like dog on men too, because I feel like,
I am.
You know, if your wife tells you like, I'm experiencing this pain, you're not going to be like, you're going to be like, you're going to discuss it with you. You're going to give a shit. There's, it's a little bit of an aside too, but I kind of like recognize this because I have this like, I am a mom and we have this tendency to just like push through no matter what. And it's like, I don't have a choice but to do all these things. And in some ways you don't. But in other ways, like I recognize it's pathological. I don't stop for anything. And sometimes, when like you look at a man and be like, no, I'm calling out because I have this thing. And like, it's possible there's a middle ground we need to find, because in some ways I'm like, I don't know, this is dudes taking care of themselves. This is dudes being like, I don't feel good. I'm going to go home and rest now, and it's like, there's actually probably, maybe take a page from that. Anyway, sorry, just general meanderings in the mind. Back to Rosemary's Baby.
Do we want to talk about the yellow?
Yes. Okay, so here's my thing with the yellow, just really fast, because mine's super short. When she says yellow and white wallpaper, like, do you feel that that's purposeful, or is it the English major in me screaming that it's purposeful?
That's what the talk is out there, James. But it's not just the wallpaper; it's like the everything that's yellow. Of
course, but I mean, it's so direct to me, like. So yeah, so I didn't know if it's just too many years.
It has to be. You can't say yellow wallpaper and not think Charlotte Perkins Gilman. You know what I mean? Like that just you can't do it.
I will say that I didn't make that connection until you said it a little bit ago, Rebecca, when you were like kind of listing off some stuff and you're like, oh, and the yellow wallpaper is like, yeah, why does everyone choose yellow? I'm like, oh wait, no, that story. Like, yeah, I didn't immediately reach that, but I was not an English major. So.
But I think that there are so many other possibilities that it might be one of those things that people like fans have clung to that maybe had less significance than intended and maybe not, because of course we have the yellow wallpaper thing. Like the stories are so parallel in so many ways.
Absolutely. That was my thing. Yeah, but go ahead.
But also people are like, ooh, is it yellow for sulfur and it's supposed to be hell? And then other people are like, okay, or is it that yellow and green are allegedly gender neutral for babies? So that when a woman doesn't know if she's having a girl or a boy, and people don't know whether to buy her pink and blue, and yes, that's a dumb thing, but it's a whole other conversation. So like yellow is the safe thing to make everything yellow.
That was honestly my first.
Yeah.
That was the only conclusion that I reached. And then, of course, I was thinking of Jason Bateman's character in Juno when he's like, why does everyone think that yellow is gender neutral? Yeah. And again, I agree that the entire like gender, like color things, gender in general can be a societal construct, whatever. Like, but again, we're dealing with like norms of how people act when people are gestating.
Especially in the 60s. But also thinking that it's the late 60s, yellow was really fucking popular. Like that sort of like mustardy yellows and like avocado greens, like those were hugely popular for interior decorating. So like it could be all of those things, any of those things. But if you watch it, you think about, because I didn't think about the yellow, but then I read about that theory and I watched it again and all the yellow was really coming out. It's all over.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the how close the themes of the yellow wallpaper and Rosemary's Baby are. You have obviously gender roles, mental illness, oppression, but even like the supernatural forces and hallucinations and paranoia. Yeah, like it's
taking a baby away. All of that.
So for me, it was so direct. But then there's also that piece of me that always goes, well, yeah, I got a fucking English major. Like maybe it's direct to me. That doesn't mean that it is to anyone else, Like I watch horror movies and I'm like, see, that's vaginal and that's penises and that's this. And everybody's like, no. And I'm like, yes, I took abnormal psych and that's definitely what all of this is. And so I never know where that line is with my English major analysis.
But a lot of that stuff is subconscious.
Yeah.
Whether or not they chose to put it in there. I can't think of an exact example, but I have like had people approach me before and been like, wow, the way that you use this particular metaphor in your book was amazing. I'm like, right? And then I have to go Google what the hell they're talking about. And it's like, sometimes it's something that I'm like, oh, okay, like, is it this sort of cultural and subconscious or cultural, what is the Jungian term? Collective unconscious, like, these things that mean something to us as a species without us always understanding why exactly. And I think things like that can absolutely like be part of it. The symbolism and everything like that. So I do think it's interesting because I really think that that's quite possible that whether or not it was intentional, it still carries that same message, because it does seem very, I don't want to say on the nose to where it's like, wow, beat us over the head with it, but it is very direct.
Yeah, I think it's
cool.
Shockingly, I don't have a ton much more. Fun trivia. It was Mia Farrow's real arm getting the blood draw. She let them really take blood.
Like,
it was. I don't know.
I just feel like that whole like old like reference to Dustin Hoffman being like, it's like it's called acting. You don't actually have to do that shit. No, Roman, you don't need to actually, like, I'm surprised you didn't make her really get pregnant. And like, no, you actually do
tried.
you have to be raped by the devil. The devil will be played by me, Roman Polanski.
Can we talk for a second? I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent now, but in that scene, and it's a horrific scene. I know it's a horrific scene, but like the devil's hands just look like dish gloves. Like they're just dish gloves that they glued some claws to.
I was disappointed with the devil, I gotta say.
With the devil's hands, I was like, man, like that's low budget. And this movie cost like $3 million to make in the 60s. They had some money, but they still just did like dish glove devil.
$2 million just went to Roman Polanski. He just kept it. So.
I just sort of like the way that they, and I do appreciate that they didn't do direct shots of either the devil or the baby. Like, I think that was more effective in that fashion. But like the way, like looking at those like little hairy like things, to me that suggested Chewbacca, and then it's like, then I'm picturing that it's like getting banged by Chewbacca while you're talking to the Pope. It's so awkward, but who among us hasn't been there? It's just these things you got to navigate.
You're just throwing out book titles today. Look out for my next book, Getting Banged by Chewbacca While Talking to the Pope. I'm excited.
I'm not Chuck Tingle, okay?
It's a whole series.
No, you would almost at that point have to worry about making the devil baby too cute too. Like can you imagine how much that would pull you out?
I picture him as cute though.
But like as an audience, can you imagine how that would pull you out of the moment if you were like, but he's so cute?
It's like precious moments.
Like just a newborn with all black eyes, just black pits for eyes, and like pointy little hands. It would still be adorable.
Well, because and this is again, this is speaking from my very specific experience of, it took me 3 years. It was devastating. That whole thing just fucking sucked. And like by the end of it, it's like I would not have cared what came out. Like it could be, Gollum, Sauron. I would have been like, come here, baby. So like I just sort of, I'm not saying that her reacting that way to it was inauthentic, because also now that I'm thinking about it, her screaming like, what did you do to it? It's not like, ew, this thing's not my baby. It's what did you do to my baby, to make it look like this. And I think it is, again, it's very authentic that she would come over and start attempting to care. But that in itself is insidious, because it's like, people say this about kids all the time. When you have people who choose not to have children, which is everybody's complete and utter right. And then you have just like milquetoast, empty brain people saying like, you'll regret it. Just wait till you have one and you'll love it. It's like, yeah, from a hormonal standpoint. And I don't want to say that that's what love is based on, but you experience a surge in that, after you've given birth. And it's not universal, but yes, the likelihood is once you give birth to this human, you're going to feel something for it. That doesn't excuse forced birth. it does not excuse it. You don't get to say like, weren't we right now to make you have the devil's baby, which was very much what these people were acting like. And the way that they acted, though, it's like, well, what does she know? She's just the mother. And that, I just couldn't help but think of like, she walks into this room of crinkly old rich people standing around with drinks, like, and no one's even really paying attention to the baby. No. And they're just partying at her expense, like, because they've made her give birth. And then you've got this nasty woman like rocking it too fast. And what do you know, and all this stuff. And it's like, that is a very on the nose metaphor for the forced birth, entire movement. Yep. It's like, we're going to hold you down and make you do this, but we don't care about you. It's like, well, we'll kill you, milk or not. It's just so repulsive, but it's too on point. I mean, I don't know.
So that was another point that pulled me out, that I thought lost something that could have been more effective. When she walks by and sticks her tongue out at Rosemary, it was like, It was too funny. It was too like, what the fuck, like,
I know.
And it pulled me out of the horror of that moment. And if I have one complaint with this movie, aside from the runtime, because I think it could be much tighter, but if I had one piece that I would pull out, it would be the sticking your tongue out, because while I found it hilarious, it killed the moment for me. And when you go from this rocking to just that hatred and that jealousy, like, that could have been so much more impactful without the little stick your tongue out moment.
Yeah, that did. It pulled the punch of it.
Yeah. Again, I like it, but I hate it.
I want an alternate ending where she does love her baby, because, as Laurel says, of course she would. But then, like, Antichrist, whose name I think is Andy or Adrian.
Yeah. He's the Antichrist.
In the book, it's Andy, I think. In the book, isn't it Andy?
She calls him Andy because she's going to name it Andy or Jenny. And she's talking to the baby and she says, "I'm so sorry, little Andy or Jenny." But then they call the baby Adrian. In the sequel, the made-for-TV 1976 sequel, his name is Andy as well. So whatever.
Okay, that's what I'm remembering then.
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember her like waking up or something. And I don't think I saw it. I feel like I read something or whatever, because I don't think I saw that movie. But like, she wakes up and she's been in a coma for however long. And they're like talking about this politician, this very successful politician who I think is maybe like a presidential candidate or something, named Andy. So that might have been what I was remembering.
That could be. But I would like it if he immediately sensed that his mother hated all these people and killed them all in front of her. Like, just tortured all of them right there while she watched. And they, like, maybe she jiggled him while he did it.
Yeah.
And they just had a a good time
Yeah, she gives him a little burp,
amazing
fire, and just like melts people's faces. That would actually be like a very heartwarming ending. I would love that. I would be okay with that. That'd be less bleak, in my opinion. Because I would love the whole thing. It's like, oh, well, you might disrespect my mother, but you're not going to get far with that.
Yes. I'm literally the devil's baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will fuck you up. Like, who are you to me, Laura Louise? You can't even rock me right.
I'm so annoyed at for her for having a name close to mine, because like they kept saying it, and I was like, because normally like I hear Laura.
Yeah.
I usually don't hear Laurel, but Laurel Louise, like I kept hearing, I'm like, get away from my name.
Yeah, she's terrible. She's a terrible person.
She was worse than Minnie.
Mm-hmm.
She had no redeeming characteristics at all. I really hated to, although again, it was very effective the way that in that room full of cold, vicious people, Roman and Minnie are the most attractive. Yes. Because Roman is giving her provenance is like, you're his mother. That's what's right. Back off. Let her rock her own child. And Minnie's like, no, of course, sweetie. Here, have some tea. Like, she's still.
Yep.
It's so Stockholm. It's just like, okay, these are,
It's Stockholm and it's parental, right? Because it goes back to like Hutch was sort of her parental figure, right? And then the Cassavetes really are more like Guy's parents. And so they're like these intrusive in-laws, but in the end, they still kind of have that relationship, even in that moment. Like, and this is going to sound like a bad joke, but it's that like the devil, sort of like where even in that room full of all of these horrible people, the safest two there are them.
Yeah. Because they're not
Okay.
actively threatening to murder her.
Yep.
It's a pretty low fucking bar, but
Yes. Yes, it is a low bar. She brought her unpoisoned tea. It's like, oh, that's very nice. It's like the first thing that wasn't poison that Minnie gave her.
yeah, so it's just Lipton tea. Of course, I was like, why didn't you throw it in Minnie's face? It's scalding hot.
Yep.
At least fuck her up a little, you know? I did love that she spit in Guy's face, but I'm mad that she dropped the knife. Because you walk
I
in there with a
wanted her to
knife,
stab
you're
him.
not going to get them all. But
Yep.
like, I would have probably just like come in with it like kind of at my side, wait till a guy came up and like, bonk, bonk, got your eyes. You know, that's from Don Baumgarten, you fucker. Like, I would want to cause some damage on the way out at the very least.
Also, Guy is so unimportant.
Yeah.
Ah,
No one needs him. He's not the father. He's just there, you know? He's just a piece of shit. Like, she could
He's a
murder him and the cult wouldn't care.
he's a pimp.
Yep.
He sold her.
Yep.
Because the other thing that gets me about this is the consent issue, which is that, and again, this is not universal, but typically when you look at themes of possession and deals with the devil, there is motivation, there is impetus, there is the character who is getting involved in this is making a choice to do so. And in this case, because it's like, oh, you have to let me in, you know, you got to let me in. So you got to be open to it, whether it's just playing with a Ouija board or, you know, getting exposed in this whatever way. There was no consent required on this part because he consented on our behalf.
Mhm.
And the idea that you can, it's like, well, you know, because think about it, it's like, oh, you sold yourself for the devil. At least you got a Ferrari, right? But it's like, if it's like, I sold your soul to the devil, I'm really excited with the career that I got out of it. You know, thanks for, I sold your soul to the devil. This is where we're at here. And that idea is so horrifying too. Like, I mean,
Yeah. I didn't know that the devil followed, United States legality laws, but it makes sense. Like now that I say it out loud, so he probably wrote half of them.
I can see him composing. I'm like, they'll never go for this. It's too over the top. It's like, my God, they did.
And then the funny part is we'll put a statue of the 10 Commandments right here in the lobby.
I was just thinking about how, like, Andy/Adrian doesn't necessarily need to grow up to be a bad guy, you know? Like,
He could just be
he could be a great guy.
little
He's a
mischievous.
baby. Yeah.
A
But,
little
like,
furry.
he can be anything he wants, you know? Don't let your genetics define you, you know? Like, nature versus nurture.
I would watch that movie in a heartbeat.
You get out there, be an activist, you know? Oh, this is something interesting I was surprised to find. So there have been like sequels and spin-offs and stuff. There was the 76 sequel, but then Levin wrote Son of Rosemary in 1997, like a full, 30 years later? Is that math right?
Yeah,
My math
yeah.
is terrible. It never made it to become a movie. It kind of sold okay, but nobody really was impressed. There was a 2-part miniseries, also called Rosemary's Baby, aired on NBC in 2014, starring Zoe Saldana. And it was set in Paris instead of New York City. And nobody really liked it much, though it stayed fairly faithful to the storyline. And I kind of want to watch it out of curiosity because I can't quite imagine Zoe Saldana as like this wide-eyed innocent. Like she's usually like this badass. So I can't picture it, but I want to see it. But this was the part that I was like, ooh, a prequel called Apartment 7A was just made by Paramount and it's supposed to come out soon. Like filming just wrapped for it.
Oh, cool.
So does that like follow Gardenia maybe, or more just like some of the occurrences in the building?
It doesn't have a lot of info about premise. The only thing I found was that the storyline centers on a young dancer who rents a room from an older couple. I'm hoping that it's sort of like the Terry story, kind of, you know, like,
yeah,
like maybe it is kind of Terry or even a predecessor of Terry, you know, like how many women did they cycle through and kill?
Well, especially because, I mean, when they talk about finding a dead infant, right,
Yeah.
you kind of wonder if that's related. It's like, well, did the devil just not take that time, you know, or
Or did a mother kill their baby? Like, and then themselves, if they found that that's who their baby was.
Yeah.
So interested. I think Terry was one of like I don't know if it's fair to call her a loose thread, but a looser thread who I'm still curious about. So
that was one thing I loved about this movie, that we didn't get a lot of answers. You had to piece things together. Like you were talking about the lady who had the apartment before them and how she dies the same way as Hutch. Like that's the stuff you have to piece together. And I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if this movie was made recently, we'd have this like 4-minute montage spelling everything out and piecing it together for us in the big reveal. And I'm so glad we don't have that. Like it hadn't even dawned on me that Terry could have been pregnant and killed herself. I love that. That's my headcanon now. That is amazing. But there's so much going on. And if you were in this situation, you wouldn't have those answers. You might not even have those questions, so not having it all spelled out for us is fantastic. I think this is a really effective use of that. Whereas a lot of times I feel like, people are like, oh crap, I don't know what to do with that. So we'll just leave it, and this does not feel that way at all. Like this feels very purposefully leaving the pieces everywhere for you to figure it out.
Well, because how would anyone who's within that narrative find that information?
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't. And by that point, she's not going to be real focused on doing anything but trying to get herself safe. So
Minnie would pour tea and then explain the entire plot to us. That's what would happen.
Although if that were like a sequel, I would watch it. Like I would watch Minnie just monologuing.
And then there was that other girl that we had, we just pulled her out from under a bridge and she was ungrateful. She wasn't okay with it. And what other kind of prospects did she have?
I'm kind of disturbed by how well you do Minnie, but I like it.
Not me. I'm sitting here like, what kind of short story can I write with this character and cast Laurel in the short film now?
I will absolutely narrate it. That's fine with me. Yeah.
Please.
The mini monologues would just be fucking amazing. It's just mini stories of the cult and over the years.
It's bad though, because like I mimic accents a lot, and half the time I don't realize I'm doing it. It's like a few times while we've been doing this episode, I've realized like, did I just say that with like a mild New York accent? Was it a little bit Brooklyn when I was doing that? I'm like, geez, because no, that's bad.
Have you ever done it to somebody? Like they have an accent and you?
I did a British accent in front of Gemma. I had managed to avoid it that whole week we were in Colorado, and then we're sitting there at the Stoker banquet, and I said something because it's like when I'm at home, like when I'm at work, whatever. They're just very used to. I'll like just come out with an accent for like one or two sentences, just as I'm And I said something, and she was looking at the director. She goes, and she was like, "My God, is that another British person?" And I was like, "Oh God, okay, there's this thing that I do." And she thought it was hilarious, and now she like tells other British people. She's like, "No, wait, let Laurel do her accent. Yes, have her do it."
That's so fantastic.
Well, I went on, I did the Shadows at the Door podcast, and they're British. And I had, Mark had heard that from Gemma. He's like, "Oh, you must do it. You simply must." And then to get me like to do it, he did his Southern accent first. And I was like, my God, okay. I will now do the British accent in the wake of that.
I won't be doing any because people would just be offended and come kill me. So sad day.
Well, is it just because you're that bad at it, or?
and I'm purposely offensive. Yeah. So,
I know you're practically Joe Rogan over here.
That's right. I wish I had his download numbers.
So this is me buzz killing, but you're thinking about offensiveness. I do think, we need to talk about how race was treated in this movie and how the only Black actor in the whole film was the elevator attendant.
There was also
and then the only Asian actor was taking photos at the party, and I was like, wow.
I literally immediately wrote Rebecca, and I was like, did they cast an Asian guy just to take pictures? What?
I mean, I feel like they did. And there's also this part of me that like feels like Roman Polanski was like, so progressive. Look at me. Like there's this. And I remember the person of color who was the cabbie. He's the one who drops her off at Dr. Hill's office. And she turns to him and she says, will you please stay and watch until I get in the building? And he does without question. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't ask any questions. He just does. Like he helps open the door for her and he stays there. And I just remember like feeling so heartbroken that like if she had just stayed with that dude, like if she had stayed in his cab, like she was safer with that man than with anybody other than like Hutch in the entire movie. And she gets delivered from but she's so desperate that she just asks for this one small piece of help from this stranger, and he gives it without question. And he would have been probably the safest person to stay around.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Fucked up.
I got nothing that can follow that.
No, I just didn't want to leave it out. Like,
Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, that was so bad. Just him when he pulls out his camera and starts taking pictures.
Okay, if other people had cameras, I wouldn't have been as honed in on it, but like it was just so stereotypical that I was like, why? You could have like, I'm not saying they shouldn't have hired him, but I'm saying this wouldn't be weird if anyone else did it. And I'm just or if there were just like if 3 people were taking pictures, I wouldn't have thought about it. But it's just the one guy, and I'm like, what the hell?
So I have a thing that I'm curious about, and I'm not sure if it's like one of those things where it's like, no, like you're being too much of an English major, but like, sure. Okay, so I get why Guy, I don't excuse Guy. I understand why Guy sold his wife out because he wanted to be a famous actor because he's a piece of shit and that's all he cares about. I am wondering what all of the other cult members are going to get out of this. Like, did it ever go into that? Did I miss it? Is there an assumption that I'm supposed to make? Like, they've obviously been trying to do this for some time. So, like, what are they going to get?
My feeling is that, of course, Roman/Stephen is doing it because he's continuing his father's legacy. This is something like this portal that his father tried to open and was prevented by being murdered. And I mean, the assumption that I came to was just that all of these people who were peripheral had been promised something similar to what Guy had. Gardenia, was a successful female lawyer, because I dislike the inference that it's like, or the implication that it's like, well, the only reason she was successful is because she made a deal with the devil. Because we know lady brains, they don't handle the law very well.
They shouldn't read books.
They shouldn't. And if they had husbands who were nice enough to snatch them away and throw them away, then there wouldn't be these problems. But
I'm doing such a disservice to my wife not taking her books. Jeez. I keep buying her books. That's what I've been doing wrong. It all makes sense.
James.
And being talked to while I'm reading a book, let alone if someone tried to take it out of my hands, like just not a thing. But I don't know. I
threw it away.
Oh my God. I just get the impression that it's money, it's power, because what they're talking about, like, he's going to like rise up and like, cause the apocalypse. And that cousin was like, and I'm sorry, that's a good thing. Why again? But in some ways you've got these people who, for the most part, already are extremely privileged. They're living in this outrageous apartment building. You've got people flying in from Greece. You've got all these people who are like obviously well off. They're still literally willing to sacrifice the bodies of women to get over and above that because it's not enough. We want to have the power of Satan over the entire world. And of course, the leopards aren't going to eat our faces. So we're perfectly safe.
And that brings up another question. So Adrian Marcato has been dead for 60 years at this point. This was all at the turn of the century, right? So there's been 60 years of, I guess, Stephen being in charge, Stephen/Roman being the head of this cult, right?
Yeah.
So has Minnie tried to have the devil's baby? Like, did she subject herself to this? Did Laura Louise subject? Like, all of these women in the building who are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? Like, in the past 60 years, have any of them volunteered? Or, right? Or is it always pulling women off the streets and, you know, sort of attacking the unsuspecting? I just wanted to know if they volunteered.
That's a really good, because that hadn't occurred to me. I did write a note about how they're telling her, you know, at the end, they're like, he chose you. He chose you. He set things up so he could get you, you know. But I didn't really get the impression that any of these women were like felt slighted by that, you know. But that is a good question, because they do, like at the beginning, they talk about how many in Roman didn't have kids, you know, and yeah, maybe there was an issue there with that. But I don't know. There's just, to me, I sort of like the idea better that it's like, no, we're not going to subject ourselves to that. You know, that sounds awful. We want it to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then we will uphold you as some kind, right? Like, we're going to tell you that this happened to you because you're special, you know, to make it all seem better.
And again, the lack of autonomy, he chose you, as though that's supposed to mean something, you know. And I think about things like,
so ungrateful.
I know.
She's so ungrateful.
I was saying, again, I live my life in memes, but I saw one recently where they were talking about how, like, it's pretty, like, kind of wrong that when a man is attracted to a woman and doesn't reciprocate, there's a lot of times this pressure of like, just give him a chance, just let him have the chance to convince you. And the number of times that happened to me, and I didn't process how fucked up that is, that the emphasis we're placing, that the importance, that what we care about is that all that matters is the man's attracted to you. So that's an equation that's already solved itself. Just walk on in. That's your role in it. In a really weird situation with my sister. I mean, we were both married at the time. It's like 10 years ago, something like that. We were at a bar, just like drinking and hanging out, and she's super hot. So we can't ever go anywhere without like it being like this, like, you know, thing. Sometimes I just want to be like, sweetie, can we put a shroud on you just until we get out there so we can just ignore, you know. But again, it's not like it's her fault. And I certainly don't mean to implicate that. It's just, she's that chick. And there were these guys who were just like really, really trying hard. Like, we want to buy you drinks. We want to do this. Y'all, the entire fucking bar got in it. Well, I'm talking probably 40 people at this pub. We're like, girls, come on, give them a chance. Like, pressured the fuck out of us until we're finally like, fine, thanks for the beer. We'll play a game of pool with you. And then like they start macking on us and we're both like, we're married. They were so rude and shitty and dismissive about it. And the whole like bar turns their backs on us. And I just remember feeling like such an asshole that I'd let myself get pressured into that, and how revolting of a situation that was. It's like, these randos chose you. Therefore, you're now obligated to give them your attention. And it's just so disgusting. I don't know.
Well, like, be grateful for that $2 beer. And it's like, no, yeah. I can buy my own drinks. Like, I don't need this charity from you. You know,
yeah.
You keep it. Go, yeah. You know, you keep
also,
it.
you have bad taste in beer. Go away with your Bud Light over here.
But the movie it does what it's supposed to do. We're also pissed off. So
yeah, I know. Because you're talking about like watching the 2014 version with Zoe, and I'm like, no. Let me know if she ends up like lighting all of them on fire or making like a Republican kebab out of all of them and shoving them out a window. That I'll watch. There is immense and vast value in this movie, but yeah, I'm gonna.
People didn't care for it, and they said it seemed stretched. I mean, 2 hours and 15 minutes is long enough. And like I said, a lot of that is because of the verbatim dialogue from the novel. Mm-hmm. But this was a 2-part miniseries, and each part was 2 hours. So it was 4 hours. And people were like, no, that was too long. It was just stretched.
Oh, my.
So,
in my head, the second episode is just like Saw for conservatives. And she just sets up nothing but horrible traps that they have no way of getting out of, and they all die horribly in very, like, you know, ironic fashions.
I'd watch that. That would be my new favorite show. So
I can't wait till one of these rants I go on your show, because like this is where I get the rantiest, is on your show. I can't wait to get canceled like on some level. But like
someone will have to listen to the show first.
Oh, thank God. Right. Okay. was concerned.
No, we get enough hate mail occasionally. I know somebody listens to it. It's fine.
But honestly, this is the kind of thing I want to be canceled over. Like, this is
Right?
what I want. It's like, she was really mad about loss of body autonomy. You sick bitch.
That was my real reaction. I was like, the people that listen to our show are like, Republican kebab, that's amazing. So they're not going to cancel you. If anything, they'll make you their queen. So you got any more, Rebecca?
Oh, I got little things here and there. They're all miscellaneous. Mia Farrow was the one humming at the beginning and the end. That was her voice. She beat out people who auditioned for humming that lullaby. Polanski was like, no, let's just have you do it. Also, he chose her. Polanski chose her. Shocker.
Therefore, she had to do it.
Yep. The end, I thought it was super smart little detail, having her in like drapey white and blue, which is the way that, Jesus's mom is usually styled in Catholic imagery. So I was like, oh, that's clever, and it's definitely something I didn't catch the first time, the first time, because I hadn't watched the movie in years and years. And then I watched it several weeks ago, wrote up a bunch of stuff, did a bunch of research, but then watched it again yesterday and had to like add stuff and make some corrections. So
I appreciate, I just want to say that I appreciate the way that you approached it. I appreciate your notes. I liked the connections that you made that I never had, that I'd never made, and that I'd never like recognized stuff. So I appreciate your English major bringing in here, Rebecca, and like, applying it to all of it. Cause it's, again, like I'm still learning the whole symbolism thing. And it's interesting. There's a whole lot more to this that I hadn't even noticed. And there's already so much that's on the surface level. So I appreciate it. Thanks for asking me to be part of this. This was great.
You're welcome, but clearly you do know about all that symbolism stuff because you're putting it in all your books and people are pointing it out. So you're just like, You're
right. It was completely intentional. Now, what was that symbolism again? Could you just give me the name?
I'm just saying, like, some part of your brain does know it if you're doing it, even if, you're not. Oh, I do want to talk about something that I left out.
Yeah.
Left out a few things. My goodness. So with the whole curse thing, Levin's wife also left him during all of this. His first wife left him. And he did go on to get married again. But with all of the other marriages breaking up and all this other stuff, like his went out the door too. And then this book/movie sort of haunted him for life. Now, he never said that. This is his friends and the people who knew him were making this observation because, when he was writing this, he had these reservations about it. He was worried, which is interesting because he kept telling people he was an atheist, but this fear was not an atheist fear, right? Like, if you're an atheist, you have no fear of this stuff. So he was professing to be an atheist, but then getting scared of all of this stuff. Then he started feeling guilty because he wondered if this book, this movie, this story was partially responsible for some of the satanic shit that was happening, or at least was being blamed on Satanism. So he kind of absorbed this. He went on, he was very successful. Like he never stopped writing. He went on to write a ton more, novels and plays. And I think he wrote a musical. But his friends said that he never seemed to enjoy his success, that he sort of faded out of publicity. He didn't party with movie stars. He didn't flaunt his wealth, that he kind of shrank from it. And they thought that he was always affected by doing this story, and that he was, if not explicitly regretful, that it at least caused him to withdraw, and that he started to have these sort of religious fears, spiritual fears, based on the storyline, even though he's like, nope, Jewish family, now atheist. So I thought that was super interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and then this is just funny. I don't know. Part of the marketing for the film was little pins that said "Pray for Rosemary's Baby" given out to the public.
Oh my.
And Polanski was mad about it because then people thought that was the movie title. And it even got written up that way, like in articles, like, oh, Pray for Rosemary's Baby is coming out. And he's like, no, it's just called Rosemary's Baby. So
that makes me really hope that a whole bunch of like church ladies like, oh, what a lovely Christian film. Let's settle in and hear about this. I love babies and birth and praying. Dear God, you know. I just would I want to picture that. I hope that a lot of tickets got sold that way.
Can we start a weekly call where you just do accents for me? That'd be amazing.
Yes.
This is bringing me so much joy.
I do it all the time anyways, so.
It's the equivalent of, okay, so you know how Kid Rock tried to cancel Bud Light or something a little while ago? And then people started putting up all of these recordings of them shooting cases of Bud Light.
Yeah.
But like, you bought the Bud Light to then shoot it. They don't care if you're drinking it or shooting it. You're buying their product.
I don't know did either of you watch Kimmy Schmidt?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So like there's a storyline in one of the
song ever.
It really is. But there's a storyline in one of the later seasons where it's like this lifelong thing. They don't, they want to get the Washington Redskins to change their name, because obviously that's horrible. And then when they're meeting with the higher ups, they're like, well, look, honestly, yeah, we would change it. But all the people who were so angry about it constantly buy our gear and then they burn it and they buy more to burn it.
Yes.
So they convince all the teams to change things. They end up becoming the Washington Gun Takers. And then all the conservatives buy their gear and light it on fire. And then you have the whole like NFL like changing all their names. It's like there was one of them that was like raisin cookies that look like chocolate chips, all these things that make people so angry. And so every time I hear that, I'm like, yeah, it's the Washington Gun Takers. Yep.
Yes. Yes. And that was Rosemary's Baby because all of these people who were so mad about it went to see it to get mad about it.
I wish I could get people mad at my book Trumpus. That would be amazing. That would help me so much.
I don't know why they're not so mad. They should.
Do you want me to narrate the audiobook?
Yeah, I do. I would love.
I have no expertise or equipment.
Your audition today has been amazing. What's your Rudy Giuliani sound like?
Oh my God, I'd have to actually. All I ever see is pictures of him. I don't ever hear his voice. So like my Rudy Giuliani impression is.
I think when he talks, he sounds like he has bubble gum in his mouth. Like he's always hiding like some gum in each cheek. That's what he sounds like to me.
He's getting ready for the winter.
Listen to these things.
He's ready for all 4 seasons.
Yep.
Anyway, I couldn't resist it. It was right there.
This is very good. It's very good.
But yeah, please get mad at Trumpus. Buy a bunch of copies. Read them. Burn them. Whatever you want to do. I don't care.
James is being very blasé, but for the listeners, like, dude, you're gonna like just read the fucking description of it, and you're gonna want this thing. Like
every voice is captured so well.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
buy so many of them that you can build a bonfire out of them if you're mad at them.
Burn them all.
But for all the humans who will be amused by it, you buy it, you read it, and you go give it a nice review. And you watch the actual Satanists burn things that,
I always find it funny, like kind of coming back to the movie here. I always find it funny that the people who constantly talk about, oh, Satan's coming, the Antichrist is coming. And then they like blame Satanists for like trying to get things like statues and stuff the same way that other religions get it. And I'm always like, that these people don't believe in Satan, right? Like the only people who believe in Satan are like good Christians. Like even the Jewish community doesn't believe in Satan the same way. So
Presbyterians don't either.
It's just odd.
Oh, okay. One more thing. Kind of funny.
Sure.
For a minute, some folks from the Catholic Church are like, but it's kind of cool that this movie says the devil is real. So like they're kind of supporting us. And then like they got shouted down by the people saying like blasphemous, blah, blah, blah. But that was because like in a way they were like verifying Catholic beliefs, like the devil's real and he walks among us and he's coming back and all this stuff.
Yeah, that's always been my problem with possession. We kind of accidentally ended up with like a possession devil cult thing going on this month. It wasn't intentional, but once it lined up, it became funny to me. But I always talk about how I don't really like possession films, and that's why, because I don't like Catholic superhero movies. So yeah. So I'm excited that even in this, that's kind of left out. Like nobody calls in a priest, or like she doesn't run to the church to get away from people or any of that kind of stuff. I'm kind of glad that's not in here, or at least not the usual way.
Are we gonna do the part where we recommend stuff? Because I've got like 2 recommendations. Okay.
Sure.
So for a book, The Redemption of Morgan Bright by Chris, it's Panettiere, and I'm sorry, Chris, I probably pronounced your last name wrong. I'm from Kentucky. It is, I read an arc of this. It's coming out, I think, in January, maybe a couple months later. I don't want to go into it too much. The premise is, a woman whose estranged sister passed away. Like she checks herself into an asylum because that is where her sister disappeared from. It does not go in the directions that you would expect it to. It handles things beautifully. It is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It's absolutely fucking fantastic. And I would recommend it along these themes. And also the movie, The Sentinel. And I don't know if I would recommend it as like, oh, wow, I love the message of this movie, but there's a lot of similarities in, this apartment building and like the oddities that happen and this kind of, and ways of being used by certain like religious aspects. Those would be 2 recommendations that I would make if you dig Rosemary's Baby.
Nice. Rebecca, do you have anything people should watch or read if they enjoyed this?
I did not think of any of that. So
right.
No.
Cool. My double feature that I normally do, I guess I would, I'd go 1BR. I don't know if either of you have seen 1BR, but it has apartments and cults and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's one of those kind of lesser known films that I like to push because there's a couple great moments in it. So that's what I would suggest. Don would normally give us his 2,137 movies here, but we get to skip that today because he ran away from home and hasn't come back yet. So let's bring it back to the 2 of you. Where can people find you online or buy your stuff or follow your new editor-in-chief position or anything else? Whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
Laurel, go ahead.
I'm mostly on Twitter. I shouldn't be. I know it's wrong, but that's mostly where you can find me. I'm also on Instagram a whole lot. Usually just like, I can't remember which ones are Hightower Laurel and which ones are Laurel Hightower, but if you Google that, you'll find me. And I have a woefully out-of-date website, but the messaging aspect of it does work. I have a book that just came out through Flame Tree. It's called Silent Key. It has lots of horrible ways to die and some romance in it. And then I have a new book coming out through Ghoulish in, I think it's April of next year, called The Day of the Door, with like a horrifying cover by Trevor Henderson that I will not be allowed to display in my house for any reason at all, as dictated by my 5-year-old.
Nice.
Wow. That's a good endorsement for that book cover.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about you, Rebecca?
My website is mostly up to date, RebeccaCuthbert.com. I am kind of on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm trying to be on Threads, but Threads is still a bit weird. Trying to get used to it. We'll see. And, you can buy my book out now. You can look for Creep This Way coming out in January. And hopefully in the new year, we will be posting some information from Psychotoxin about how and where and when to submit to the new Pink imprint.
Fantastical.
Yep. Looking at novellas, collections, and novels.
I have read Creep This Way, and while I haven't finished my blurb yet, because, I'm not good at deadlines, apparently, all of a sudden, I just want to say I find it really refreshing because the chapters are fast, They're just straightforward. Like there's so many writing books that spend too many pages setting up things that we all know. And yours is like social media. This is why it's important. And I found that so refreshing to just be able to go to each part and just hit it. And you have like your experiences with it followed by, and now you need to do this, or now this will help you, or you should try this. And it's just such a fast way to do it. And I just really wanted to comment on how much I appreciated the quick nature of it. But also, I found you did a really great job with setting it up for people, whether they're brand new to this or if they've been writing forever. Because as we all know, this industry changes fucking fast. And what we were all doing 2 years ago on Twitter is gone. And everyone had to rebuild and go new ways. And I don't know. I just find no matter how long you've been doing this, you can find something, whether it's your book or any of these other books, there's always new shit to learn. And I just want people to remember, we think we know this shit, but it's changing all the time. So yeah, people should definitely grab it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really like trial and error stuff. It's just like, this is where I've tried and failed. What are you doing? What are you trying?
My next book will just be called Fail and Fail. So no. All right. I guess that wraps it up. So I want to thank you both for being here today. I hope you had a good time. I know I learned a lot. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right. That wraps it up for another week. As always, I'm James Sabata and I'm Don Guillory, and we'll see you next week here at the Necronomid.com.